Before this video starts, I wanted to do a preamble, and this is with my headphones, so I apologize for the different in voice quality versus than what you'll hear tonight on the debate. But I wanted to give a little warning that this is going to be difficult to listen to if you haven't watched the debate already. And you may want to take it in chunks. Take care of yourselves. Practice self-care. You're always allowed to push back away from everything, and take care of yourself. So I wanted to come to you as myself, as Daniel, before we got onto the show and everything else, to let you know that I care about you and I love you. And I want you to be safe mentally and physically and emotionally. And if this debate is too hard for you to listen to, or it's too much at one time, take your time. Listen to it at your leisure. This is for you. This is for posterity's sake as well. But take care of yourselves. Thank you. And I hope that this will, though, what you do listen to and the rest of the shows that we produce in the next coming weeks will inspire you to get out and vote. I love you all. You're all big legends. Take care of yourselves. And I say this into the night. There is always hope.
Evil is amongst us. Stay back, boy. This calls for divine intervention. I kick ass for the Lord.
Hey everybody, hopefully this is working like it's supposed to. So this is just a test run for a couple of seconds. I do apologize. So give me just a moment here while I get everything up and running, because this is a new thing for me. So give me 1 second. Alright, so it seems that we're not dropping frames or anything right now, so that's good. So people shouldn't be afraid of their governments. Governments should be afraid of their people. Alan Moore, V for Vendetta. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Marion Wright Elderman. Let's watch a debate. Welcome to Heresy and Hearsay, a podcast to reclaim faith in the context of political discussion. I'm Reverend Barney, and you can follow me on Twitter at SethRothII, and now I have a Twitch, which is Daniel_Rev_Barney. You can also follow the show on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and any podcast catcher. Just look for Heresy and Hearsay. Please like, share, and subscribe. Also give us a review. That helps others find us. I'm doing this today solo, but as always, you can find my partner and better half of the podcast, September, on Twitch and Twitter at 9of12. That's NINEOF12, and hear her on the Geek Grills podcast. She's also helping get out the vote for the Biden-Harris campaign. Heresy and Hearsay does have a Patreon site where you can find us at patreon.com, at patreon.com/Heresy and Hearsay, where you can visit and support us. Just $2 a month will go a long way in helping us make this humble show. You can also contribute bits and Twitch and subscribe free if you have Amazon Prime, or you can provide, pay for a subscription, and you can also share subscriptions with other people. I may be doing this completely alone tonight, and that's perfectly fine, but I wanted to do this and get this set up. So I am also going to be following Daniel Dale, because he has my name, but he will also be doing live tweeting, so you can watch his live tweets where he'll fact check, and I'll be following along and giving that information as well. For the most part, what we'll be doing is listening to the moderators and the programming, and if something just strikes me as just horrendous. I will pause the programming and I will expound on that and why that is just utterly stupid. But the point of this is to basically, we're going to have a conversation during this and talk about the talking points. And of course, there's going to be spin afterwards, but we're not going to worry about that. So this show, because I'm recording it as well, I have both the recorder working at the same time that I have the live stream going. So that should be a plus. So I'm looking forward to that. I will post that up tomorrow morning for those who did not see the stream. And then as far as everybody else that will be that follows the show, the regular podcast will be done later tonight, will be recorded later tonight, and will be posted onto the channel either tomorrow afternoon or more than likely Thursday afternoon, because I don't want to double post for everybody. So that's the situation there for that. Again, I want to thank my friend Jeanette for the wonderful microphone set she got me for Christmas. It is for my birthday. I apologize, Chris. Wow, I just want this year to be over. For my birthday. It is a beautiful professional setup here. It has the little spit guard on it to, in front of it, and then it has the foam to go over the microphone on top of that, and it has this full range microphone setup. I can swing the microphone everywhere I go. It is absolutely gorgeous, and I appreciate it, and it is very, very helpful as far as that's concerned. So I do want to thank her again. I want to thank all those individuals who did send me Christmas presents, birthday presents. See, I'm trying to speed the year along, and we haven't even got through October yet. For that, I've got a couple more religious texts that I really wanted. I also got a couple other things that I really have been looking forward to. I got this wonderful. This is definitely a Daniel thing, but I got a little music box that plays the Sailor Moon theme, and a little wooden music box, and I'm just very happy about that situation. So that makes me happy as well for that. So for those who know me, know I love me some Sailor Moon. So that will be a thing that we will do. As far as that will be something that I will cherish and enjoy as well. And I've gotten, I'll be getting a throw blanket for my love seat. That is a Sailor Moon thing. My brother got that for me, and I'm just thrilled about that. And several other things, and I'm grateful for all of those. So I just wanted to thank those people who sent me birthday presents because I definitely was needing those. So because this year has been really crappy, and normally I do a charity thing, but this year I was just like, you know what, I need to be a little selfish, because we've all had some rough times, and it's okay to be a little selfish. So right now, just so you know, I am on the MSNBC for the debate, just because. So they're talking about the debate and everything. So they're showing the polling that 4 years ago versus now, and how Clinton was up by 4 years ago versus Biden is now up by 8. So, but here's the thing: I don't care if Biden is up by 35 million percent. I know that's statistically impossible, but still, I'm just saying. I don't care how many, how much a candidate is up by. Go and vote. The reason why we're doing this right now, the reason why we are covering this debate, and we'll cover the vice presidential debate. Pardon me, I am so sorry. I've got a little bit of sinuses, so forgive me for that. For next week, the vice presidential debate, is because I think it's important for us to listen and to hear what the talking points are right now. We're pretty sure we know what they are, and most people who are listening to debates, I'll be perfectly honest, or not listening to debates, but most of the people of America have pretty much made it a choice. And there's a lot of people Bob Chapman. He's known as Movie Bob. He's on a couple of different sites. He's a Patreon, and he's also on The Escapist. About 8 years ago, when they were talking about the talking about the election, as far as when it came to Obama versus Mitt Romney, that one of the things he brought up is it's not so much that people are undecided, it's just that they're unwilling to vote, which is a big difference. And that's something that you need to understand, is that most of the electorate nowadays have already made up their decision for the most part. Don't get me wrong, there is a small percentage of American population that are just not politically plugged in, and they avoid politics like the plague. And when they avoid politics like the plague, they do not they don't know. They are completely they don't see anything. They don't understand anything. So or not, they don't understand anything. They just don't pay attention, because, and it's understandable, especially these last 4 years. If you have been politically savvy in any stretch of the imagination, you are tired, and it's one of those things, especially if you saw the writing on the wall 4 years ago. If you saw this and you saw, oh Lord, this is how this is going to be, that this is going to be a nightmare, and at this point, and it's all come to fruition. 2020 is that fruition. Then you're tired. You're exhausted, and politics can make you that way. Politics can make you extremely tired and extremely exhausted, especially if you pay attention to it. So it's one of those situations where, unfortunately, there are people who don't pay attention, and that is completely and totally understandable. So I'm looking at they're showing a screen of some of the people in the room, and I'm a little shocked that they actually are allowing people in there at all. That there are people, I guess it's press people, but with the global pandemic and everything, I'm a little shocked that there's people actually in attendance. So I do see that they do have social distanced the podiums, so that will be entertaining to see, because I know Trump likes to walk, so I don't know if they're going to be doing a town hall type situation this year. I'm not going to be able to cover the other two debates because they are on nights that I work, so which are Thursday nights. I don't know why they didn't spread them out, like a Tuesday night, Thursday night, and then like a Monday night or something. I know why they didn't do a Monday night, because we have football. So, but they need, sometimes things are more precedent. But so here is the Trump clan coming in, dressed in mostly whites and blacks and wearing face masks. And here's Joe Biden's wife and sister coming in, and they're dressed in completely different colors. And there is what's her face, wow, he brought like 50 people, Trump did, because he was going to obviously need the support. So here we go. I am going to unmute because we're getting some probably early stuff talking.
Well, we can see that he's doing it.
See?
Trying to make it work. He's explaining the ground rules to the people in the room, and we're apparently from the pool not allowed to receive it and to put it on TV. That's weird. Which I didn't know until we tried to do it live. Tells you what a pro I am. Never boring. With me while I fell through my safety net. In terms of Donald Trump as a debater, David. We spoke with Hillary Clinton earlier this hour about what it's like debating.
All right, so
versus,
we were going to get
other-
some, like, rules. I don't know exactly. Well, hopefully they'll do that to the audience, you know, when we start in 2 minutes or so. If we're on time, it depends. It looks like we'll be on time, so that will be a plus. So when we go live at that point to the actual debate, we will see how that goes. I see everybody is wearing masks even while they're sitting, so that's good. Dr. Jill Biden is in a very lovely green dress. I know I shouldn't be critiquing dresses at this point. That is not what's important. I'm just happen to notice it is a very classy outfit, and I just happened to notice that, so I apologize. It just caught my attention. But I noticed all the Trump people have taken off their masks as soon as they sat down, and they all look very mad. So that's good. They look very displeased about life in general, or it could be just okay. That would have been a bad joke, and Daniel's not going to do bad comedy or punching down or punching up for the most part, because that would be rude. We're going to stick strictly to the politics, though I will warn in advance if there are colorful language. I apologize in advance. That will happen. If something just really triggers me, especially if it's faith-based or just a complete and total lie situation. So we will see how this goes. Right now, from my understanding, it's supposed to run about an hour and a half total. Okay, there's Melania. She's coming in. She's dressed in a very nice pinstriped suit, woman's suit. I like it. It's very nice. It's very classic and everything else. I'll give her that. It's very classy as far as that situation is concerned. So it looks very presentable as far as the situation is concerned, as far as her whole thing is concerned. So I give her props for that as well. Again, we try to be as honorable as we can on the show when it comes to those kind of situations. So let me go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and pull up Daniel Dale's thing here, so that when we get this started here in a couple of minutes, I will say this. I have a problem, not just in general. I am sad to see that we do not have any, or what people consider just news, straight news. The Walter Cronkite's, now even nowadays, there's so many news organizations and stuff like that there is just not that Walter Cronkite, this is the news and this is the way it is, that could do these debates, because we have Chris Wallace from Fox News doing the debate tonight. And Chris has been critical on Trump, but he's still on Fox News, and he has said things that are not helpful when it comes to, news. And I have a problem on the other side. If Rachel Maddow was to do this debate, and I love Rachel, I have a problem on that other end as well. I don't have a problem when they're doing the debates when it comes to the individual parties. If you're going to, lean more to the left or more to the right on that situation, that's fine. But when it comes to the actual presidential debates, I do feel a little saddened that we don't have that kind of gravitas that we did when I was a child. and they had, you know, debate moderators that didn't have a, for lack of a better term, was unreproachable when it came to the ethics was they were the news and that's all that mattered. And unfortunately, that's not so much the case anymore. So right now we're waiting for them to take stage and everything else. Are we getting ready? We're seeing him sitting here. Oh, here we go. I think. Are we ready? Oh, one more minute. Are we? Okay.
Good evening from the Health Education Campus of Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Clinic. I'm Chris Wallace of Fox News, and I welcome you to the first of the 2020 presidential debates between President Donald J. Trump and former Vice President Joe Biden. This debate is sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates. The commission has designed the format, 6 roughly 15-minute segments with 2-minute answers from each candidate to the first question, then open discussion for the rest of each segment. Both campaigns have agreed to these rules. For the record, I decided the topics and the questions in each topic. I can assure you, none of the questions has been shared with the commission or the two candidates. This debate is being conducted under health and safety protocols designed by the Cleveland Clinic, which is serving as the health security advisor to the commission for all 4 debates. As a precaution, both campaigns have agreed that candidates will not shake hands at the beginning of tonight's debate. The audience here in the hall has promised to remain silent. No cheers, no boos or other interruptions, so we, and more importantly you, can focus on what the candidates have to say.
And so I can move forward.
No noise except right now, as we welcome the Republican nominee, President Trump, and the Democratic nominee, Vice President Biden.
Wow, that $70,000 in hairstyle. That wow, that looks horrible.
Gentlemen, a lot of people have been waiting for this night, so let's get going. Our first subject is the Supreme Court. President Trump, you nominated Amy Coney Barrett over the weekend to succeed the late Ruth Bader Ginsburg on the court. You say the Constitution is clear about your obligation and the Senate's to consider a nominee to the court. Vice President Biden, you say that this is an effort by the president and Republicans to jam through an appointment and what you call an abuse of power. My first question to both of you tonight: why are you right in the argument you make and your opponent wrong? And where do you think a Justice Barrett would take the court? President Trump, in this first segment, you go first. 2 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chris. I will tell you very simply, we won the election. Elections have consequences. We have the Senate, we have the White House, and we have a phenomenal nominee, respected by all, top academic, good in every way. In fact, some of her biggest endorsers are very liberal people from Notre Dame and other places. So I think she's going to be fantastic. We have plenty of time, even if we did it after the election itself. I have a lot of time after the election, as you know. So I think that she will be outstanding. She's going to be as good as anybody that has served on that court. We really feel that. We have a professor at Notre Dame, highly respected by all, said she's the single greatest student he's ever had. He's been a professor for a long time at a great school. And we won the election, and therefore we have the right to choose her. And very few people knowingly would say otherwise. And by the way, the Democrats, they wouldn't even think about not doing it. If they had, the only difference is to try and do it faster. There's no way they would give it up. They had Merrick Garland, but the problem is they didn't have the election, so they were stopped. And probably that would happen in reverse also. Definitely would happen in reverse. So we won the election, and we have the right to do it, Chris.
President Trump, thank you. Same question to you, Vice President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
Well, first of all, thank you for doing this. Looking forward to this, Mr. President.
Thank you, Jim.
The American people have a right to have a say in who the Supreme Court nominee is. And that say occurs when they vote for a United States senators and when they vote for the President of the United States. They're not going to get that chance now because we're in the middle of an election already. The election has already started. Tens of thousands of people have already voted. And so the thing that should happen is we should wait. We should wait and see what the outcome of this election is. Because that's the only way the American people get to express their view is by who they elect as president and who they elect as vice president. Now, what's at stake here is the president's made it clear he wants to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. He's been running on that, he ran on that, and he's been governing on that. He's in the Supreme Court right now trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which will strip 20 million people from having insurance, health insurance now, if it goes into court. And the justice, and I'm not opposed to the justice, she seems like a very fine person. But she's written before she went on the bench, which is her right, that she thinks that the Affordable Care Act is not constitutional. The other thing is on the court, and if it's struck down, what happens? Women's rights are fundamentally changed. Once again, a woman could be held to pay more money because she has a pre-existing condition of pregnancy. They're able to charge a woman more for the same exact procedure a man gets. And that ended when we, in fact, passed the Affordable Care Act. And there's 100 million people who have pre-existing conditions, and they'll be taken away as well. Those pre-existing conditions, the insurance companies are going to love this. And so it's just not appropriate to do this before this election. If he wins the election and the Senate is Democrat or Republican, then he goes forward. If not, we should wait until February.
There aren't 100 million people with pre-existing conditions. As far as the say is concerned, the people already had their say. Okay, Justice Ginsburg said very powerfully, very strongly, at some point, 10 years ago or so, she said a president and the Senate is elected for a period of time, but a president's elected for 4 years. We're not elected for 3 years. I'm not elected for 3 years. So we have the Senate, we have a president.
He's elected to the next
During
election.
that period of time, we have an opening. I'm not elected for 3 years. I'm elected for 4 years. And the 100 million people, Joe, the 100 million people is total.
So when the Senate stopped for an entire year in February of 2016 for Obama, that was okay, but this isn't.
Totally wrong. I don't know where you got that number. The bigger problem that you have is that you're going to extinguish 180 million people with their private health care that they're very
That's
happy
simply
with.
not true.
Well, you're certainly going to socialist. You're going to socialist.
We're now into, gentlemen, we're now into open discussion.
Open discussion.
Open discussion. Yes, I agree. Go ahead, Vice President.
Number one, he knows that what I proposed. What I proposed is that we expand Obamacare and we increase it. We do not wipe any, and one of the big debates we had with 23 of my colleagues trying to win the nomination that I won, were saying that Biden wanted to allow people to have private insurance still. They can. They do. They will under my proposal.
It's not what you've said,
But
and it's not what your party has said.
That is simply
Your party
a lie.
doesn't say it. Your party
That is
wants to go socialist
My
medicine
party is
and
me.
socialist
Right
healthcare.
now, I am
And
the
they're going to
Democratic
dominate
Party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now. The platform of the
Not according
Democratic
to
Party
Harris.
is what I, in fact, approved of. What I approved of. Now, here's the deal. The deal is that it's going to wipe out pre-existing conditions. And by the way, the 200,000 people that have died on his watch, how many of those have survived? Well, there's 7 million people that contracted COVID. What does it mean for them going forward if you strike down the Affordable Care Act? And
Joe, you've had 308,000 military people dying because you couldn't provide a proper health care in the military. So don't tell me
I'm
about
happy
this.
to talk about
And if
this.
you were here, it
Look, here's
wouldn't be
the deal.
200, it would be 2 million people because you were very late on the draw. You
Late
didn't
on
want
the
me to
draw.
ban China, which was heavily infected. You didn't want me to ban
All right, gentlemen,
Europe, which was heavily
Mr.
infected.
President,
You would have been
Mr.
much
President,
later, Joe.
Mr.
Much
President,
later.
Mr.
You're
President,
talking about 2 million people.
You're not
Mr. President, as a moderator, we are going to talk about COVID in the next segment, but go ahead.
Let me finish. The point is that the president also is opposed to Roe v. Wade. That's on the ballot as well in the court. And so that's also at stake right now. And so the election is all
You don't
ready
know
to
it's
be
on the
done.
ballot. Why is it in the ballot?
Because
Why is
you
it on the
said
ballot? It's not in the ballot.
It's on the ballot in the
I
court.
don't think so.
In the court. Well,
There's nothing happening there.
Donald, would
And you
just
don't know
quiet for a minute?
her view on Roe v. Wade.
I
You
don't
know her
know.
view.
Well, all right. Let's talk. We got a lot to unpack here, gentlemen. We got a lot of time. So, on health care, and then we'll come back to Roe v. Wade.
All right.
Mr. President, the Supreme Court will hear a case a week after the election in which the Trump administration, along with 18 state attorneys general, are seeking to overturn
That's right.
Obamacare, to end Obamacare. You have spent the last...
Because they want to give good health care.
If I may ask my question, sir.
Good health care.
Over the last 4 years, you have promised to repeal and replace Obamacare, but you have never in these 4 years come up with a plan, a comprehensive plan
Yes,
to
I have.
replace Obamacare.
Of course I have.
Well,
I got rid of the individual
I'm going to
mandate.
give you an
Excuse me.
opportunity.
I got rid of the individual mandate, which was a
That is
big
not a
chunk of
comprehensive
That
plan.
is absolutely a big thing. That was the worst
I
part of
didn't ask,
Obamacare.
sir.
Chris,
You're
that was the
debating him,
worst
not
part of
me.
Obamacare.
Let me ask my question.
Well, I'll ask Joe. The individual mandate was the most unpopular aspect of Obamacare. I got rid of it.
So here's what I'm seeing right now, and I've muted it. I'm
Wait,
sorry.
you
Let me
let me-
pause it. So what I'm seeing here right now is I'm seeing that Trump's entire strategy is to overtalk everybody because he knows in an intellectual debate he cannot win that debate. He cannot win on ideas because he has none. Let's just be clear. He is an empty suit at best. He's an idiot. I know. I'm sorry. No name calling, Daniel. No name calling. No name calling. But he is trying to overtalk everybody. Chris Wallace, Joe Biden, whoever. He's going to try to overtalk people. And right now it's male. I think one of the debate individuals on, I think it's the next one is a woman. So that's going to be even more interesting because of how he views women in general and how he will treat that moderator. But so yeah, he as it looks right now, and a couple of things real quick. Daniel Dale says Trump did not ban China or Europe. He imposed travel restrictions with numerous exemptions for the U.S. citizens, green card holders, many of their family members, and the Europe exemptions exempted entire countries. So we're, the mandate penalty has been reduced to $0, but there is a mandate itself still exists. This isn't a pandemic. It's a central issue in the Republicans' lawsuit to strike down Obamacare as unconstitutional. So there's the two things. Okay, so let's get back to this.
Ask my question, and then you can answer.
Go ahead.
You, in the course of these 4 years, have never come up with a comprehensive plan to replace Obamacare, and just this last Thursday, you signed a largely symbolic executive order to protect people with pre-existing conditions 5 days before this debate. So my question, sir, is what is the Trump healthcare plan?
Well, first of all, I guess I'm debating you, not him, but that's okay. I'm not surprised. Let me just tell you something. There's nothing symbolic. I'm cutting drug prices. I'm going with favored nations, which no president has the courage to do because you're going against big pharma. Drug prices will be coming down 80 or 90%. You could have done it during your 47-year period in government, but you didn't do it. Nobody's done it. So we're cutting health care.
What about
All of the things
Yes,
that we've done,
yes, not
insulin.
cut
I give you an example. Insulin. It was destroying families, destroying people because I'm getting it for so cheap. It's like water, you want to know the truth. So cheap. Take a look at all of the drugs what we're doing, prescription drug prices. We're going to allow our governors now to go to other countries to buy drugs because they pay just a tiny fraction.
As I say, this is open discussion.
No,
Let
but
me
this
ask you
is
about,
big- this
you'll
is
be
big
happy,
stuff.
sir, you'll be happy. I'm about to pick up on one of your points to ask the vice president, which is he points out that you would like to add a public option to Obamacare, and
Yes.
the argument that he makes and other Republicans make is that is going to end private insurance.
It is
and
not.
will. I'm asking you the question. It will
Not what
end.
the party says, by the way.
It will end private insurance and create a government takeover of health care.
It does not. It's only for those people who are so poor they qualify for Medicaid. They can get that free in most states, except governors who want to deny people who are poor Medicaid. Anyone who qualifies for Medicare would, Medicaid would automatically be enrolled in the public option. The vast majority of the American people would still not be in that option. Number one.
Joe, you
Number
agree
two.
with Bernie Sanders, who's far left, on the manifesto, we call it.
with
And that gives you socialized medicine.
Look, hey,
Are you saying
I'm not
you
going
didn't
to
agree?
listen to him. The fact of the matter is, I beat Bernie Sanders.
Not by much.
I beat him a whole hell of a lot. I'm
Not
here,
by
I'm here
much.
standing facing you, old buddy.
Pocahontas would have left
Well,
2 days
I'll tell
early.
you.
You would have lost every primary.
All he knows how to
on
do
Super
is hurt.
Tuesday. You got
Look,
very lucky.
here's the deal. I got very lucky. I'm going to get very lucky tonight as well. And tonight I'm going to make
What?
sure, because
With what?
here's the deal. Here's the deal. The fact is that everything he's saying so far is simply a lie. I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
But you
I just
agree,
want to
hey,
make
Joe,
sure.
you're the liar.
I want to make sure.
Graduated last in your class, and first in your class.
I want to make
Mr.
sure.
President, can you let him finish, sir?
He doesn't know how to do that. He has,
You'd be
you know,
surprised.
you pick
You'd be surprised.
the
Go ahead,
wrong
Joe.
guy, the wrong night at the wrong time.
Listen, you agreed with
Here's the
Bernie
deal.
Sanders to the
The
manifesto.
whole idea.
Let him.
There is no manifesto. Number
Please
one.
let him speak, Mr.
Number two.
You just lost the left.
Number two.
You just lost the left. You agreed with Bernie Sanders on a plan.
Folks,
Absolutely.
folks,
agreed
do you have
to.
any
Under that
idea
thing
what
that's
this clown's
socialized,
doing?
They call it
Mr.
Medicare
you
for
have any
President.
do?
Socialized medicine.
Mr.
Well, I
President.
tell you what, he is not for any help for people needing health care.
Bernie?
Because he in fact already has cost 10 million people their health care that they had from their employers because of his recession. Number one. Number two,
yeah.
there are 20 million people getting health care through Obamacare now that he wants to take it away. He won't ever look you in the eye and say that's what he wants to do. Take it away.
No, I want to give you
Number
better
three.
health care at a much lower price
But-
because
and by the way, he
Obamacare
doesn't
is
know
no
how.
good.
He doesn't know how
I've
to do
already
that.
fixed it.
He has never
I've
offered
already
a plan.
fixed it to an extent.
He has never
Obamacare,
done a
as you
single
might
thing.
know, but probably don't.
Okay.
Gentlemen, you realize
is no
if you're
good,
both
Joe.
speaking at the
It's
same
no good,
time,
and it's too expensive.
let the president. Go ahead, sir.
Obamacare is no good. We made it better, and I had a choice to make very early on. We took away the individual mandate. We guaranteed pre-existing conditions, but took away the individual mandate. Listen, this is the way it is, and that destroyed. That they shouldn't even call it Obamacare. Then I had a choice to make. Do I let my people run it really well, or badly? If I run it badly, they'll probably blame him, but they'll blame me. But more importantly, I want to help people. Okay? I said you got to run it so well.
That's what he's
And I
doing.
just had a meeting with them. They said the problem is no matter how well you run Obamacare, it's a disaster. It's too expensive.
I got you.
Premiums
I
are
got
too
it.
high, and
That's
it
what
doesn't
these
work.
people- that's
So
what these people
we
say.
do want to get rid of it.
Chris,
we want to get rid of it.
I
and
understand
get
it, sir, but I have
something
to
cheaper and
give you
better.
roughly equal time.
Good.
Please let the vice president talk.
Good.
He has no plan for health care. He
course we do.
he sends out wishful thinking. He has executive orders that have no power. He hasn't lowered drug costs for anybody. He's been promising a health care plan since he got elected. He has none, like almost everything else he talks about. He does not have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. And the fact is, this man doesn't know what he's talking about.
All right,
He's
I
against-
have one final question for you,
Sure.
Mr. Vice President. If Senate Republicans, we were talking originally about the Supreme Court here, if Senate Republicans go ahead and confirm Justice Barrett, there has been talk about ending the filibuster or even packing the court, adding to the 9 justices there. You call this a distraction by the president, but in fact it wasn't brought up by the president. It was brought up by some of your Democratic colleagues in the Congress. So my question to you is, you have refused in the past to talk about it. Are you willing to tell the American people tonight whether or not you will support either ending the filibuster or packing the court?
Whatever position I take on that, that'll become the issue. The issue is the American people should speak. You should go out and vote. You're in voting now. Vote and let your senators know how
Are you gonna
strongly
pack
you
the
feel.
court?
Vote now.
gonna pack the
Make
court?
sure you, in fact, let people know
He doesn't want
you're
to answer the
senators.
question.
I'm not going to answer the question
Why would
because,
you answer that
because
question?
the
You wanna
question
put a
is,
lot of
the
new
question
Supreme Court
is,
justices,
the
radical
question-
left,
Will you Just shut up, man.
Listen, who is on your list, Joe? Who's on your list?
Right, gentlemen, I think
This
we've
is
ended
so
this.
He's going to pack the court.
We have
We're not going to give a list.
We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe.
They should.
47 years, you've done nothing. They understand.
All right. The second subject is COVID-19, which is an awfully serious subject, so let's try to be serious about it. We have had more than 7 million cases of coronavirus in the United States, and more than 200,000 people have died. Even after we produce a vaccine, experts say that it could be months or even years before we come back to anything approaching normal. My question for both of you is, based on what you have said and done so far, and what you have said you would do starting in 2021, why should the American people trust you more than your opponent to deal with this public health crisis going forward? In this case, the question goes to you first, sir. 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Good luck. 200,000 dead. As you said, over 7 million infected in the United States. We, in fact, have 4% of the world's population, 20% of the deaths. 40,000 people a day are contracting COVID. In addition to that, about between 750 and 1,000 people a day are dying. When he was presented with that number, he said, it is what it is. Well, it is what it is because you are who you are. That's why it is. The president has no plan. He hasn't laid out anything. He knew all the way back in February how serious this crisis was. He knew it was a deadly disease. What did he do? He's on tape as acknowledging he knew it. He said he didn't tell us or give people a warning of it because he didn't want to panic the American people. You don't panic. He panicked. In addition to that, what did he do? He went in and we were insisting that the Chinese, the people we had on the ground in China should be able to go to Wuhan and determine for themselves how dangerous this was. He did not even ask Xi to do that. He told us what a great job Xi was doing. He said we owe him a debt of gratitude for being so transparent with us. And what did he do then? He then did nothing. He waited and waited and waited. He still doesn't have a plan. I laid out back in March exactly what we should be doing. And I laid out again in July what we should be doing. We should be providing all the protective gear possible. We should be providing the money the House has passed in order to be able to go out and get people the help they need to keep their businesses open schools. It costs a lot of money. You should get out of your bunker and get out of the sand trap and get in your golf course and go in the Oval Office and bring together the Democrats and Republicans and fund what needs to be done now to save lives.
So if we would have listened to you...
You have 2 minutes, sir.
If we would have listened to you, the country would have been left wide open. Millions of people would have died, not 200,000, and one person is too much. It's China's fault. It should have never happened. They stopped it from going in, but it was China's fault. And by the way, when you talk about numbers, you don't know how many people died in China. You don't know how many people died in Russia. You don't know how many people died in India. They don't exactly give you a straight count, just so you understand. But if you look at what we've done, I closed it, and you said he's xenophobic. He's a racist, and he's xenophobic. Because you didn't think we should have closed our country. Wait a minute.
It's 2 minutes.
You didn't think we should have closed our country because you thought it was terrible. You wouldn't have closed it for another 2 months. By my doing it early, in fact, Dr. Fauci said, President Trump saved thousands of lives. Many of you Democrat governors said, President Trump did a phenomenal job. We worked with the governor. Oh, really? Go take a look. The governors said I did a phenomenal job. Most of them said that. In fact, people that would not be necessarily on my side said that. President Trump did a phenomenal job. We did. We got the gowns. We got the masks. We made the ventilators. You wouldn't have made ventilators. And now we're weeks away from a vaccine. We're doing therapeutics already. Fewer people are dying when they get sick. Far fewer people are dying. We've done a great job. The only thing I haven't done a good job, and that's because of the fake news. No matter what you say to them, they give you bad press on it. It's just fake news. They give you good press. They give me bad press because that's the way it is, unfortunately. But let me just tell you something. I don't care. I've gotten used to it. But I'll tell you, Joe, you could never have done the job that we did. You don't have it in your blood. You could have never done that job.
I know how to do the job. I know how to get the job
Well, you didn't do
done.
very well in swine flu. H1N1, you were a disaster. Your own chief of staff said you were a disaster.
14,000 people died, not 200,000. There was
A
no
very-
economic
Let- let-
recession.
Sir, you made a
Far
There
less
was no
lethal
recession.
disease.
You made a point. Let him answer.
And there was we didn't shut down the economy. This is his economy he's shut down. The reason it's shut down is because, look, you folks at home, how many of you got up this morning and had an empty chair at the kitchen table because someone died of COVID? How many of you were in a situation where you lost your mom or dad and you couldn't even speak to them? You had a nurse holding a phone up so you could, in fact, say goodbye.
You would have lost far
How
more
many
people.
people?
Far
That is-
more people.
And,
You would have been
and by the way,
months late.
your own
Months behind me,
his
Joe.
own CDC director says we could lose as many as another 200,000 people between now and the end of the year. And he held up and he said, if we just wear a mask, we can save half those numbers. Just a mask. And by the way, in terms of the whole notion of a vaccine, we're for a vaccine, but I don't trust him at all. Nor do you. I know you don't. What we trust is a scientist.
You don't
we
trust
Dr.
Johnson
Fauci.
Johnson? Fine.
So, to be clear, and I know I've been a little silent on this, and I apologize. So, to be clear on this situation here, Joe Biden didn't have all the intel as far as what's going on. I'm not completely absolving him of the situation as far as closing the travel ban or saying it was xenophobic, because I think the travel ban should have been very restrictive at that point. I also think that if we actually done what we were supposed to do, which was what was suggested, and Trump fought it every step of the way, which is basically all of us go in our houses for a month, for 30 days, like what Europe did, and get paid for it, and everything, we would be where most of Europe is currently. The problem is that we're not going to get there, especially with the fact that so many people are refusing to even believe this is a thing. Of course, this is the country that also has QAnon and flat earthers and anti-vaxxers. So, you know, we're the nation's not going to get better until there's a vaccine at this point. So that is where we are in the situation. I'll be honest with you, we're going to try to stick through this, but if this continues where this is a breakdown in communications, honestly, this debate will be pointless, and I will stop it, because there's not any ideas going on right now, unfortunately. So let's see what goes on in the next little bit, but I'll be perfectly honest, this is probably, if this continues, which I don't see where it would not, but honestly, you've got two old men who are fighting each other right now, and you've got a blowhard on one side, and then you've got Donald Trump. No, Joe is not going to take bullshit, and so this is not a debate. This is an argument.
And
Okay,
by the way,
gentlemen, let me move on to questions about the future, because you both have touched on two of the questions I'm going to ask. Focusing on the future first, President Trump, you have repeatedly either contradicted or been at odds with some of your government's own top scientists. The week before last, the head of the Centers for Disease Control, Dr. Redfield, said it would be summer before the vaccine would become generally available to the public. You said that he was confused and mistaken. Those were your two words.
Yeah.
But Dr. Slawi, the head of your Operation Warp Speed, has said exactly the same thing. Are they both wrong?
Well, I've spoken to the companies and we can have it a lot sooner. It's a very political thing because people like this would rather make it political than save lives. It is a very political thing. I've spoken to Pfizer, I've spoken to all of the people that you have to speak to. We have great Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, and others. They can go faster than that by a lot. become very political because the left, or I don't know if I call
So
it
you're
left, I don't know
suggesting
what I
that the
call it.
head of your Operation Warp Speed, Dr. Snobby?
I disagree with him. Yeah, no, I disagree with both of them. And he didn't say that. He said it could be there, but it could also be much sooner. I had him in my office 2 days ago.
He talked about the summer, sir, before it's generally available.
Because
Just like
he said
Dr.
it's a
Beckman.
possibility that we'll have the answer before November 1st. It could also be
That's not
after
when it's
that.
generally available.
Well, we're going to deliver it right away. We have the military all set up. Logistically, they're all set up. We have our military that delivers soldiers, and they can do 200,000 a day. They're going to be
This
delivering
is the
them.
same man
It's
who
all
told
set
you
up.
by Easter this would be gone away. By the warm weather it'd be gone. Miraculous, like a miracle. And by the way, maybe you could inject some bleach in your arm, and that would take care of it. This is the
That
same
was
man.
said sarcastically.
That was
you
said-
know that. That was said
And
sarcastically.
so here's the deal. This man is talking about a vaccine. Every serious company is talking about maybe having a vaccine done by the end of the year. But the distribution of that vaccine will not occur until sometime beginning or the middle of next year to get it out. If we get the vaccine. And pray God we will. Pray God we will.
Mr. Vice President, I want to pick up
We'll have
on
the
that.
vaccine
I
sooner
want to
than
pick
that.
up on this question, though. You say the public can trust the scientists, but they can't trust President Trump. In fact, you said that again tonight. Your running mate, Senator Harris, goes further, saying the public health experts, quote, will be muzzled, will be suppressed. Given the fact that polls already show that people are concerned about the vaccine and are reluctant to take it, are you and your running mate, Senator Harris, contributing to that fear?
No more than the question you just asked him. You pointed out. He puts pressure and disagrees with his own scientists.
But you're saying you can't,
Everybody
or
knows.
Senator
And-
Harris is saying you
no.
can't trust the scientists.
No, you can trust the scientists. She didn't say that. You can trust
She
the
said the public health
Did say
experts,
that.
quote, will be muzzled, will
Yes.
be suppressed.
Well, that's what he's going to try to do. But there's millions of scientists, there's thousands of scientists out there, like here at this great hospital, that don't work for him. Their job doesn't depend on him. That's not. They're the people. And by
I
the way,
spoke to the
and
scientists that are in
by
charge.
the way,
They will have
and-
the vaccine very soon.
Do you believe for a moment what he's telling you in light of all the lies he's told you about the whole issue relating to COVID? He still hasn't even acknowledged that he knew this was happening, knew how dangerous it was going to be back in February, and he didn't even tell you. He's on record as saying it. He panicked, or he just looked at the stock.
So I want to take a moment here for those who aren't watching and are actually listening to me, which is right now I see one person in the chat room, and they may listen to this show versus this. So I want to take a moment and make it clear. There are moments in this where Joe is looking at, Vice President Biden is looking at Chris Wallace. And then there are times where he will pivot and he will look straight down that camera lens like a politician, like a good politician, and he will be talking to the American people at that point. And you can tell when he does it because he'll say something like, you're going to believe, or he puts it into a you statement, and then he changes and he pivots that statement to where he is talking to the American people. It is a good television tactic. If there was, I'm giving a little history here, and I know this is already going to be longer than it needs to be. But there is this, when Nixon and Kennedy were debating back in 1960. Nixon, people who listened to it on the radio said Nixon won, but people who watched it on television said Kennedy won. Nixon was not feeling well, he wasn't looking well, and that makes a difference. We don't have many people who listen on the radio. Those people who may listen to this particular podcast versus watching the debate per se will maybe have a different opinion. I hope they don't, but have a different opinion. But, when you're watching it on TV and you get those kind of moments where you see that, where he's looking down that camera lens and he's talking directly to the American people, that's a big, big deal. Also, luckily, right now, we're not hearing the sniffle snuffle of 4 years ago. I don't know if Trump didn't do the Adderall or whatever happened, but that was a big deal 4 years ago during the debates. But Trump his looks and his demeanor is very angry, very, and that will play to certain people, but it's not going to play to most people. Especially these days, especially as angry as the nation is, an angry look, this constant anger, over talking and everything, flash polls and everything, I have a feeling are going to really decimate Trump. And but the problem is that he can't change his style, because that's not who he is, and because this isn't scripted and he's off script, he's not going to be able to be he won't be able to be focused, because he's having to work off his brain. And whatever runs that brain will not allow him to not be egotistical.
One of the two, because guess what? A lot of people die, and a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
So,
Mr. President?
Did you use the word smart? So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You didn't go to Delaware State. You graduated either the lowest or almost the lowest in your class. Don't ever use the word smart with me. Don't ever use that word.
Oh, give me a break.
Because you know what? There's nothing smart about you, Joe. 47 years you've done nothing.
Let's have this debate.
And if you would have had, let me just tell you something, Joe.
No,
If you would have had the charge of what I was put through, I had to close the greatest economy in the history of our country. And by the way, now it's being built again.
See,
and it's
We're going
going
to get
up
to the
fast.
economy in the next segment, sir.
Okay.
It's going up fast.
Okay.
Look forward to it.
When it comes to how the virus has been handled so far, the two of you have taken very different approaches, and this is going to affect how the virus is handled going forward by whichever of you ends up becoming the next president. I want to quickly go through several of those. Reopenings. Vice President Biden, you have been much more reluctant than President Trump about reopening the economy and schools. Why, sir?
Because he doesn't have a plan. If I were running, I know what the plan is. You've got to provide these businesses the ability to have the money to be able to reopen with the PPE as well as with the sanitation they need. You have to
Tell
provide
that to
them
Nancy
plastic.
Pelosi.
Will he just shush for a minute?
Tell it to Nancy
No.
Pelosi. And Schumer,
by the
Brian
way,
Chuck.
Nancy Pelosi and Schumer, they have a plan. He won't even meet with them. The Republicans won't meet with the Senate. And he sits on his golf course, and well, I mean, literally, think about it.
You probably play
think
more than
about
I do, Joe.
What about this question of reopenings and the fact?
Well, he wants to shut down this country,
Oh.
and I want to keep it open. And we did a great
He
thing by
doesn't
shutting
really
it
shut
down.
it down.
Wait a minute, Joe. Let me shut you down for a second, Joe, just for 1 second. He wants to shut down the country. We just went through it. We had to, because we didn't know anything about the disease. Now we found that elderly people with heart problems and diabetes and different problems are very, very vulnerable. We learned a lot. Young children aren't. Even younger people aren't. We've learned a lot. But he wants to shut it down. More people will be hurt by continuing. If you look at Pennsylvania, if you look at certain states that have been shut down, they have Democrat governors all. One of the reasons they're shut down is because they want to keep it shut down until after the election, November 3rd. Because it's a political. But those states are not doing well that are shut down right now.
Respond to that.
President
shut
Trump,
down the
you
whole
have
country.
begun to increasingly question the effectiveness of masks as a disease preventer. And in fact, recently you have cited the issue of waiters touching their masks and touching plates. Are you questioning
No, I think masks are
efficacy
okay.
of
You have to
masks?
understand, if you look, I mean, I have a mask right here. I put a mask on, when I think I need it. Tonight, as an example, everybody's had a test, and you've had social distancing and all of the things that you have to, but I
Just
wear
like your
masks
rally.
when needed. When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from me, and he shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen. I will say
Vice
this.
President Biden, go ahead, sir.
Look, the way to open businesses is give them the wherewithal to be able to open. We provided money.
And I was asking you, sir, about masks.
Well, masks make a big difference. His own head of the CDC said if we just wore masks between now, everybody wore masks in social distance between now and January, we'd probably save up to 100,000 lives. It matters.
And they've also said the opposite. They've also said
no serious person said the opposite.
Dr. Fauci said the opposite.
He did not say the opposite.
We got a little bit more than a minute left in this
masks
segment.
are not good. Then he changed his mind. He said masks are good.
I want to
okay with masks.
I want to ask you both about one last subject, because your different approaches has even affected the way that you have campaigned. President Trump, you're holding large rallies with crowds packed together, thousands of people. Outside, yes, sir, agreed. Vice President Biden, you are holding much smaller events with...
Because nobody will show up.
People with...
What's true? Nobody shows up to his rally.
All right. In any case, why you holding the big rallies? Why you not? You go first, sir.
Because people want to hear what I have to say. I mean,
Are you not
done a
worried
great
about it
job
spreading
as the
disease?
president, and I'll have 35,000 people show up at airports. We use airports.
Are you
and
not
hangars.
worried about
we
the
have a
disease
lot of
issues,
people.
sir?
Well, so far we have had no problem whatsoever. It's outside. That's a big difference, according to the experts. And we do them outside. We have tremendous crowds, as you see. I mean, and literally on 24 hours notice. And Joe does the circles and has 3 people someplace.
Okay.
By the way, did you see one of the last big rallies he had? And a reporter came up to him to ask him a question. He said, no, stand back. All right, put on your mask. Put on a mask. Have you been tested? I'm way far away from those other people. That's what he said. I'm going to be okay. He's not worried about you. He's not worried about the people out there breathing in one another.
We've had no negative effect.
No negative effect.
We've had no negative effect. And we've had 40,000
All right,
people
you wanna
at these rallies.
Just quickly finish up, because I want to move on to our next.
Yes, I would. He's been totally irresponsible the way in which he has handled the social distancing and people wearing masks, basically encourage them not to.
All right.
And he's a fool on this.
If you could get the crowds, you would have done the same thing. But you can't. Nobody cares.
Gentlemen, can we move on to the economy?
Yes.
The economy is, I think it's fair to say, recovering faster than expected from the shutdown.
Much faster.
In the second quarter, the unemployment rate fell to 8.4% last month. The Federal Reserve says the hit to growth, which is going to be there, is not going to be nearly as big as they had expected. President Trump, you say we are in a V-shaped recovery. Vice President Biden, you say it's more of a K-shape. What difference does that mean to the American people in terms of the economy? President Trump, in this segment, you go first.
So we built the greatest economy in history. We closed it down because of the China plague. When the plague came in, we closed it down, which was very hard psychologically to do. He didn't think we should close it down, and he was wrong. And again, 2 million people would be dead now instead of still 204,000 people is too much. 1 person is too much. Should have never happened from China. But what happened is we closed it down, and now we're reopening, and we're doing record business. We had 10.4 million people in a 4-month period that we've put back into the workforce. That's a record the likes of which nobody's ever seen before. And he wants to close down he will shut it down again. He will destroy this country. You know, a lot of people, between drugs and alcohol and depression, when you start shutting it down, you take a look at what's happening in some of your Democrat-run states where they have these tough shutdowns. And I'm telling you, it's because they don't want to open it. One of them came out last week, you saw that. Oh, we're going to open up on November 9th. Why November 9th? Because it's after the election. They think they're hurting us by keeping them closed. They're hurting people. People know what to do. They can social distance, they can wash their hands, they can wear masks, they can do whatever they want. But they got to open these states up. When you look at North Carolina, when you look, and these governors are under siege, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and a couple of others, you got to open these states up.
So when he says North Carolina, I'm in North Carolina, and we'll be covering this on the proper show because I'll be doing politics is local. I'll be covering local politics, some of the elections, but all of the major statewide elections, especially the Senate, the senator, lieutenant governor, they're all in high single or double digits over their competitors. So what he's saying about that they're under siege, yeah, they're under siege because, for example, Dan Forrest has tried to sue a couple of times. He is the Republican candidate and lieutenant governor currently to reopen the states, to stop the masks and all that kind of stuff. And not even Republicans are backing him up on that situation. And he's had to drop a couple of different lawsuits about that. So the under siege and now Trump is now Dan Forrest is trying to get Barr to come in and rig our elections because we're allowing people to vote via mail. So the only under siege is by the Republicans. It's not by the voters and the polling. And polling for when you look at down ballot polling, that is a little more closer, a little more accurate than when you look at presidential polling. So just keep that in mind as well.
Fair. You're talking about almost just like being in prison. And you look at what's going on with divorce, look at what's going on with alcoholism and drugs. It's a very, very sad thing. And he'll close down the whole country. This guy will close down the whole country and destroy our country. Our country is coming back incredibly well.
Okay, so no, he's not going to try to. Biden is not wanting to close down the country. What he's trying to do is he's trying to basically open up responsibly. The plan is very much what it should have been, which is that we do the social distancing, we do the phasing, and everything else. At this point, that we can't close the country down again. That horse has left the barn. At this point, we're having to figure out other things to do. That horse has left the barn. We had the opportunity, and it was botched. So, moving on.
Records as it does it. We don't need somebody to come in and say, let's shut it down.
All right, your 2 minutes, sir. We're now moved to you. As I said, posing the question, the president says it's a V-shaped recovery. You say it's a K-shaped recovery. What's the difference?
The difference is millionaires and billionaires like him in the middle of the COVID crisis have done very well. Billionaires have made another $300 billion because of his profligate tax proposal, and he only focused on the market. But you folks at home, you folks living in Scranton and Claymont and all the small towns and working class towns in America, how well are you doing? This guy paid a total of $750 in taxes.
Sir, wait, no, sir, it's just I understand. You've agreed to the 2 minutes, so please let him have it.
Do I get my time back? The fact is that he has, in fact, worked on this in a way that he's going to be the first president of the United States to leave office having fewer jobs in his administration than when he became president. Fewer jobs than when he became president. First one in American history. Secondly, the people who have lost their jobs are those people who have been on the front lines, those people who have been saving our lives, those people who have been out there dying, people who've been putting themselves in a way to make sure that we could all try to make it. And the idea that he is insisting that we go forward and open when you have almost half the states in America with a significant increase in COVID deaths and COVID cases in the United States of America. And he wants to open it up more. Why does he want to open it up? Why doesn't he take care of the American? You can't fix the economy until you fix the COVID crisis. And he has no intention of doing anything about making it better for you all at home in terms of your health and your safety. Schools. Why aren't schools open? Because it costs a lot of money to open them safely. You know, they were going to give, his administration was going to give the teachers and school students masks. And then they decided, no, couldn't do that because it's not a national emergency. Not a national emergency. They've done nothing to help small businesses. Nothing. They're closing. 1 in 6 is now gone. He ought to get on the job and take care of the needs of the American people so we can open safely.
All right. Your time is up, sir. Well, you're going to get to it.
I have to respond to that.
Well, you both have 2 minutes, sir.
Excuse me, he made a statement.
So did you.
People want their schools open. They don't want to be shut down. They don't want their state shut down. They want their restaurants. I look at New York. It's so sad what's happening in New York. It's almost like a ghost town. And I'm not sure it can ever recover what they've done in New York. People want their places open. They want to get back to their lives.
People
They'll
want
be
to be
careful,
safe.
but they want their schools open.
People want
I'm
to
the
be
one that
safe.
brought back football. By the way, I brought back Big Ten football. It was me, and I'm very happy to do it. And
All right,
people of
let's-
Ohio are very proud of me. And you know how I found out? When you took the
Gentlemen,
phony
we're going to
ad.
get to your economic plans going forward in a moment. But first, Mr. President, as you well know, there's a new report that in 2016, the year you were elected president, and 2017, your first year as president, that you paid $750 a year in federal income tax each of those years. I know that you pay a lot of other taxes, but I'm asking you the specific question. Is it true that you paid $750 in federal income taxes each of those 2 years?
I paid millions of dollars in taxes, millions of dollars of income tax. And let me just tell you, there was a story in one of the papers.
Show us your tax
I paid $38 million 1 year. I paid $27 million.
Show us your tax
1 year.
returns.
I went, you'll see it as soon as it's finished. You'll see it. You know, if you want to do, go to the Board of Elections. There's a 118-page or so report that says everything I have, every bank I have, I'm totally under leveraged because the assets are extremely good. And we have a very, I built a
I'm
great
asking
company.
you a specific question, which
But
is...
let me tell you.
I understand all of that.
Release your
I
tax
understand all of
return.
that.
But let me-
No, Mr. President,
Go ahead.
I'm asking you a question. Will you tell us how much you paid in federal income taxes in 2016 and 2017?
Millions of dollars.
You paid millions of dollars?
Millions of dollars.
So
yes.
not 750.
Millions of dollars, and you'll get to see it. And you'll get to
When?
see it. But let
In
me just
July?
tell you, Chris, let me just tell you something, that it was the tax laws. I don't want to pay tax. Before I came here, I was a private developer. I was a private business people. Like every other private person, unless they're stupid, they go through the laws, and that's what it is. He passed a tax bill that gave us all these privileges for depreciation and for tax credits. We build the building and we get tax credits, like the hotel on Pennsylvania Avenue. You get a massive, which, by the way, was given to me by the Obama administration, if you can believe that. Now, the man got fired
No.
right after that happened, but
Vice
that's
President Biden, you want to respond?
Yeah, I do want to respond. Look, the tax code that made him, that put him in a position that he pays less tax than a school teacher on the money a school teacher makes, is because of him he says he's smart because he can take advantage of the tax code. And he does take advantage of the tax code. That's why I'm going to eliminate the Trump tax cuts. And I'm going to eliminate those tax cuts and make sure that we invest in the people who, in fact, need the help. People out there need help.
But why didn't you do it over the last 25 years?
Because you weren't
Why didn't you
president.
do it over
Because
the
you
last
weren't
25
president
years?
screwing
No.
things up.
You were a senator, and
You're
by
the
way,
worst
you were a
president
vice-
America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
let me just tell you, Joe, I've done more in 47 months. I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe. We've done things that you never even thought of doing,
Okay.
including
Gentlemen.
fixing the broken military that you gave me, including taking care of
we're
your
talking,
vets.
Mr. President, we're talking about the economy. I'd like to ask you about your plans going forward, because, Mr. Vice President, your economic plan, if you were to be
Yes,
elected
sir.
president, focuses a lot on big government, big taxes, big spending. I want to focus first on the taxes. You propose more than $4 trillion over a decade in new taxes on individuals making more than $400,000 a year and on corporations. President Trump says that that kind of an increase in taxes is going to hurt the economy as it's just coming out of a recession.
Well, just take a look at what is the analysis done by Wall Street firms. Points out that my economic plan would create 7 million more jobs than his in 4 years, number one. And number two, it would create an additional $1 trillion in economic growth, because it would be about buying American. That we're going to make this federal government spend $600 billion a year on everything from ships to steel to buildings and the like. And under my proposal, we're going to make sure that every penny of that has to be made by a company
But
in
respectfully,
America.
sir, I'm talking about taxes, not spending.
Well, by the way, I'm going to eliminate a significant number of the tax. I'm going to make the corporate tax 28%. It shouldn't be 21%. You have 91 companies, in the Fortune 500 who don't pay a single penny in tax, making billions of dollars.
Why didn't you do it
Billions
before
of
when you were vice president
Because
with Obama?
Because you, in fact, passed that. That was your tax proposal.
I got it done, and you know what happened?
You got it done.
Our economy boomed like it's never boomed.
The economy is
Mr. President, Mr. President, let me pick up on that. You would continue your free market approach, lower taxes, more deregulation, correct?
not lower tax to American people.
Let me,
Yes, ma'am.
but in Obama's, you talk about the economy booming. It turns out that in Obama's final 3 years as president, more jobs were created, 1.5 million more jobs than in the first 3 years of your presidency.
They had the slowest recovery economic recovery since 1929. It was the slowest recovery. Also, they took over something that was down here. All you had to do is turn on the lights and you pick up a lot. But they had the slowest economic recovery.
So, Chris Wallace just said that the last 3 years of the Obama administration had 1.5 million more jobs created than the first 3 years of your administration, and then Trump comes off with a lie, saying the slowest recovery. Right, okay.
It's 1929. Let me tell you about the stock market. When the stock market goes up, that means jobs. It also means 401ks.
Okay, no. The stock market going up doesn't mean jobs. It means people who can invest in the market make money. I have a 401k. Ooh. I have a 401k because I have a job and it requires me to put money into it. It's a requirement. Because, most jobs don't have pensions these days. Back in the day, people had pensions. So, yeah, 401k, which means that if the stock market tanks like it did at the beginning of this year with the COVID situation, everyone's 401ks plummeted by astronomical numbers. So just keep that in mind. The stock market doesn't equal, Wall Street doesn't ever equal Main Street. No matter how much the Republicans say it does, it doesn't, because that money never flows down. That's that trickle down economics. And the theory is that when the stock market's going up, that means they're investing into the businesses and stuff, and they're not. They're not. What they do is with that stock market and all that kind of stuff, what they do is they do the stock buybacks, they do all that kind of stuff to make themselves richer, but it's not an investment into actual businesses, because the capital gains tax and the investment taxes and everything has gotten so low that it becomes to the point where it is more profitable for people to make money off of the stock market than it is to invest into their own businesses and to invest that way. When the marginal tax rate was 90% for over $1 million, this was, of course, adjusted for inflation, it would be about 10 or 15 million or more. I don't have the inflation calculator in front of me, and I apologize. But when it goes up, so when that was happening, there was an incentive to where your tax rate would marginally go down if you invested back into your business. So that's why companies like GM and Ford and all those kind of companies would build these big plants and everything else. And Kennedy was the first to do this, but he wasn't the last. Kennedy dropped it to 70%, and then when it slowly started going down, that's when you started to see that decline in the American manufacturing, because at that point then they could go overseas and get it cheaper at that point and still get the tax write-offs, or still make a lot of money, versus getting the tax write-offs for investing into their own business and innovating in their own businesses. And that's why for a long time, especially like the automotive businesses, there was that whole situation where there was no innovation. And it stagnated, especially in the late 70s, 80s, and 90s. And that's why when Obama took over, that's why they had to basically bail out the corporations and everything, and it was part of the business was that they had to innovate. But that's why you got all these Japanese cars coming in, and that's fine. But that was the thing is that there weren't affordable American cars that were well made that the American consumer could afford at that time, due to the fact that there was a situation. So it's one of those situations where you find yourself in where you find yourself when you drop that and you drop that incentive to invest back into your businesses. That's where you have that issue, and that's where you have that problem. All right, let's get back to this and the arguing. I don't know how much more I can take this, people. I'm just letting you know that now.
You got in. If you ever became president with your ideas, you want to terminate my taxes, I'll tell you what, you lose half of the companies that have poured in here will leave, and plenty of companies that are already here, they'll leave from other places. They will leave, and you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen.
Look, we inherited the worst recession short of a depression in American history. I was asked to bring it back. We were able to have an economic recovery that created the jobs you're talking about. We handed him a booming economy. He blew it.
It wasn't booming. It wasn't booming. It was the weakest recovery since 1920.
Is it fair to say he blew it when, in fact, when there was record low unemployment before COVID?
Yeah, but because what he did, even before COVID, manufacturing went in the hole. Manufacturing went in a hole.
Excuse me, Chris. Wait.
Number two.
Chris.
Number three.
They said it would take. No, you were number two.
No.
Chris. They said it would take a miracle to bring back manufacturing. I brought back 700,000 jobs. They brought back nothing. They gave up on manufacturing.
We did not agree.
Standard fare.
I'm the guy that brought back the automobile industry.
All right, let him back.
We brought back, I was asked to bring back Chrysler and General Motors. We brought them back right here in the state of Ohio and Michigan. He blew it. They're gone. He blew it. And in fact, they're gone.
Ohio had the best year it's ever had last year. Michigan had the best year they've ever had.
That is not true.
Many car companies came in from Germany, from Japan, went to Michigan, went to Ohio.
They're not having.
And they didn't come in with you.
Mr. Vice President, go ahead.
And so you take a look at what he's actually done. He's done very little. His trade deals are the same way. He talks about these great trade deals. You know, he talks about the art of the deal. China's perfected the art of the steal. We have a higher deficit with China now than we did before. We have the highest trade deficit with Mexico.
China ate your lunch. That's 18%. China ate your lunch, Joe. And no wonder your son goes in and he takes out billions of dollars. Takes out billions of dollars to manage. He makes millions of dollars. And also, while we're at it, why is it, just out of curiosity, the mayor of Moscow's wife gave your son $3.5 million. What did he do to deserve it? What did he do with Burisma to deserve $183,000?
None of that is true.
Oh, really?
Mr. President, please.
Totally discredited. Totally discredited. And by the way,
well, wait, he didn't get $3.5 million, Joe?
Mr. Vice
He got $3.5 million.
It is not true.
Oh, really?
Mr. President, it's an open discussion, please.
No, it's a fact.
Well, you have raised an issue. Let the Vice President answer.
Discredited.
Did Burisma pay him $183,000 a month with no experience in energy?
So I'm going to read directly from Daniel Dale's thing. We don't have proof that Hunter Biden got $3.5 million from this Russian businesswoman. Hunter Biden's lawyer, George Mintris, denies he's had any interest in this company that got the payments. So, Biden is wrong about the trade deficit with China. It's bigger now than it was before. That would have been true in 2018, but it isn't anymore. Last year's figures is slightly lower than 2016's figures, so it's only slightly. So just wanted to be clear that, Biden was a bit wrong on that statement. So, he's fact-checking on both sides. So here we go.
My son did nothing wrong at Burisma.
I think he did.
Mr. President, let him answer.
He doesn't want to let me answer because he knows I have the truth. His position has been totally, thoroughly discredited.
By who?
And
The media?
By everybody. Well, by the media, by our allies, by the World Bank, by everyone has discredited. Matter of fact, even the people who testified under oath.
So let me ask you this.
Go ahead, Mr. I'm listening to you.
You got $3.5 million from Moscow.
He testified under oath in his administration, said, I did my job and I did it very well.
Oh, really?
I did it
I'd like to know who they are.
Well, I'll give you the list of the people who testified.
Go ahead, sir.
Sure, you've already fired most of them because they did a good job.
Some people don't do a good job. with you.
Go ahead. Wait a minute. You get the final word, Mr.
Well, it's hard to get any word in with this clown. Excuse me, this.
Hey, let me just say to you,
No. I'm Mr. President.
$3.5
I'm Mr.
million,
President.
Joe.
That is simply.
Why did
not
he
true.
deserve $3.5 million from Moscow?
Look, here's the deal. We want to talk about families and ethics. I don't want to do that. I mean, his family we could talk about all night. His family's
My
already.
family,
No, let him do-
my
let him
family
do-
lost a fortune by coming down and helping
Go
us
ahead.
with
Go
government.
ahead, sir.
And that's such
And
a.
they're right here.
Mr.
That's such
Every
a great.
single one of them lost.
This is not
Mr.
about
President,
my family or his family. It's about your family,
They
the
didn't
American
put
people.
$3.5 million
He doesn't. That's not true. It doesn't want to talk about what you need. You, the American people. It's about you. That's what we're talking about.
And you should-
All right,
Not about here.
that's the end of the segment. We're moving on.
It didn't take them.
Vice President, no.
Can I be honest? It's a very important
Try to be
question.
honest.
No,
He stood up.
No,
He stood up.
the answer to
and
the
he
question is no.
threatened Ukraine.
No, sir.
With $1 billion, if you
That
get rid
is
of
you know what, you're-
absolutely not
Stop.
true.
doing it.
You're going to
On
have
tape.
True.
Gentlemen,
Is
I hate to raise my voice,
He's
but
on
it seems
tape.
to be, why should I be different than the two of you? So here's the deal.
good point.
We have 6 segments. We have ended that segment. We're going to go to the next segment. In that segment, you each are going to have 2 uninterrupted moments. In those 2 uninterrupted minutes, Mr. President, you can say anything you want. I'm going to ask a question about race, but if you want to answer about something else, go ahead. But I think that the country would be better served if we allowed both people to speak with fewer interruptions. I'm appealing to you, sir, to do that.
Well, and him too.
Well, frankly, you've been doing more
Oh,
interrupting.
that's
than
all
you
right,
have.
but he does plenty.
Well, less than, sir, less
There's
than,
plenty.
no, less than you have. Let's please continue on. The issue of race. Vice President Biden, you say that President Trump's response to the violence in Charlottesville 3 years ago, when he talked about very fine people on both sides, was what directly led you to launch this run for president.
Oh, yeah, sure.
President Trump, you have often said that you believe you have done more for black Americans than any president, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. My question for the two of you is, why should voters trust you rather than your opponent to deal with the race issues facing this country over the next 4 years? Vice President Biden, you go first.
It's about equity and equality. It's about decency. It's about the Constitution. And we have never walked away from trying to require equity for everyone, equality for the whole of America. But we've never accomplished it. But we've never walked away from it like he has done. It is true. The reason I got in the race is when those people, close your eyes, remember what those people look like coming out of the fields carrying torches, their veins bulging, and just spewing anti-Semitic bile, and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan. A young woman got killed. And they asked the president what he thought. He said there were very fine people on both sides. No president has ever said anything like that.
It is
Now,
second, sir.
Second point I'd make to you is that when Floyd was killed, when Mr. Floyd was killed, there was a peaceful protest in front of the White House. What did he do? He came out of his bunker, had the military use tear gas on him so he could walk across to a church and hold up a Bible. And then what happened after that? The bishop of that very church said that it was a disgrace. The general who was with him said all he ever wants to do is divide people, not unite people at all. This is a president who has used everything as a dog whistle to try to generate racist hatred, racist division. This is a man who, in fact, you talk about helping African Americans. 1 in 1,000 African Americans has been killed because of the coronavirus. And if he doesn't do something quickly, by the end of the year, 1 in 500 will have been killed. 1 in 500 African Americans. This man is the savior of African Americans. This man cares at all. This man's done virtually nothing. Look, the fact is that you have to look at what he talks about. You have to look at what he did. And what he did has been disastrous for the African American community.
So,
all right. So before we go too much further into that, and this has been that sticking point that has basically caused me to get even more angry. The whole peaceful protest situation was near as fascist of a situation as I could possibly imagine. For a photo op for him to hold my sacred text, the Bible, what I call my sacred text, to hold it up after he couldn't figure out even how to hold it. It's not even his Bible. And for him to not be able to hold it up properly, to not pray at that church, because the church was boarded up first off, but not to pray at that church, to not go over there and offer support of those individuals who were helping the protesters or whatever. He pushed them out of that area so he could have a photo op. And then the next day, the very next day, they came out with a campaign ad with him walking outside the gates. And then about a week later, they put up the boarding and the extra protection on the gates, so that that not only did it, supposedly protect him more, but it also basically made it to where he couldn't see anyone protesting. So I want you to keep that in mind before he speaks, and I probably blow my brain at this point. So here we go.
President Trump, you have 2 minutes. Why should Americans trust you over your opponent to deal with
You
racism?
did a crime bill, 1994, where you called them super predators, African Americans, super predators, and they've never forgotten it. They've never forgotten it, Jefferson.
No, sir. It's his 2 minutes.
So you did that, and they call you super predator, and I'm letting people out of jail now that you have treated the African American population community, you have treated the black community about as bad as anybody in this country. You did the 1990, and that's why, if you look at the polls, I'm doing better than any Republican has done in a long time, because they saw what you did. You called them super predators, and you've called them worse than that, because you look back at your testimony over the years, you've called them a lot worse than that. As far as the church is concerned, and as far as the generals are concerned, we just got the support of 250 military leaders and generals. Total support. Law enforcement, almost every law enforcement group in the United States. I have Florida, I have Texas, I have Ohio, I have Portland. The sheriff just came out today and he said, I support President Trump. I don't think you have any law enforcement. You can't even say the word law enforcement, because if you say those words, you're going to lose all of your radical left supporters. And why aren't you saying those words, Joe? Why don't you say the words law enforcement? Because, you know what? If they called us in Portland, we would put out that fire in a half an hour, but they won't do it because they're run by radical left Democrats. If you look at Chicago, if you look at any place you want to look, Seattle, they heard we were coming in the following day and they put up their hands and we got back Seattle. Minneapolis, we got it back, Joe, because we believe in law and order, but you don't. The top 10 cities and just about the top 40 cities are run by Democrats and in many cases radical left, and they've got you wrapped around their finger, Joe, to a point where you don't want to say anything about law and order. And I'll tell you what, the people of this country want and demand law and order, and you're afraid to even say it.
All right. I want to return to the question of race. Vice President Biden, after the grand jury in the Breonna Taylor case decided not to charge any of the police with homicide, you said it raises the question, quote, whether justice could be equally applied in America. Do you believe that there is a separate but unequal system of justice for blacks in this country?
Yes, there's systemic injustice in this country, in education and work and in law enforcement and the way in which it's enforced. But look, the vast majority of police officers are good, decent, honorable men and women. They risk their lives every day to take care of us. But there are some bad apples, and when they occur, when they find them, they have to be sorted out. They have to be held accountable. They have to.
All right, so I'm going to disagree with Joe on this. We need to figure out the law enforcement system, and we talked about this on one of our previous shows. There has been a systemic trying to get people to go ahead and white supremacists into law enforcement. And there is this warrior culture in the law enforcement community right now. So it's not just a few bad apples, especially when you look at some of the cities like Minneapolis tried to basically say you can't go to these warrior training cultures or whatever. And the police union said, well, anybody that goes will pay for it if you do it on your days off or whatever. So, no, I don't believe in the bad apple situation. I honestly think, and I think that's a loss at that point. I think that at this point, what needs to basically happen at that point is that we do need to defund. That doesn't mean that we'll get rid of the police officers, but what we do need to do is do much more neighborhood policing, with neighborhood people being recruited as police. We also need to do more for shelters and things like that, but that's a whole nother topic. Anyways, let them debate.
Accountable. And what I'm going to do as President of the United States is call together an entire group of people at the White House, well, everything from the civil rights groups to the police officers, the police chiefs, and we're going to work this out. We're going to work this out so we change the way in which we have more transparency in when these things happen. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to George Floyd. These cops aren't happy to see what happened to Breonna Taylor. Most don't like it. But we have to have a system where people are held accountable. And by the way, violence in response is never appropriate. Never appropriate. Peaceful protest is. Violence is never appropriate.
All right,
What is peaceful protest? When they run through the middle of the town and burn down your stores and kill people all over the place?
That
You
is
say
not
peaceful
peaceful
protest?
President
No,
Trump,
it's
I'm not
not,
asking-
but you say it is.
President Trump, I'd like to continue with the
Yes,
issue
go
of
ahead,
race. I
please.
promise we're going to get to the issue of law and order
Please.
in a moment. This month, your administration directed federal agencies to end racial sensitivity training that addresses white privilege or critical race theory. Why did you decide to do that, to end racial sensitivity training? And do you believe that there is systemic racism in this country, sir?
I ended it because it's racist. I ended it because a lot of people were complaining that they were asked to do things that were absolutely insane, that it was a radical revolution that was taking place in our military, in our schools, all over the place, and you know it, and so does everybody
What
else,
is radical,
and he would know.
What is
Oh, it was
radical
totally
about
racist.
racial sensitivity training, sir?
If you were a certain person, you had no status in life. It was sort of a reversal. And if you look at the people, we would pay people hundreds of thousands of dollars to teach very bad ideas and frankly very sick ideas. And really, they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to allow that to happen. We have to go back to the core values of this country. They were teaching people that our country is a horrible place, it's a racist place, and they were teaching people to hate our country. And I'm not going to allow that to happen.
All right. So let's be clear. There's a difference between teaching that the truth about our history and teaching that this is a horrible country. The history of our country, and for those of you who are listening, or those of you who are going to listen on the podcast or whatever, I would suggest, if you have not done this, and you can do this either by purchasing the book or by getting the audiobook at audible.com. I have both copies because his son reads the book. I would suggest that everybody pick up a copy of The People's History of the United States of America. I think it is extremely important that you get the ground side of the history. And yes, I do agree. It's hard to listen to him. It's very hard. I have a person in the chat, and it's like it's very hard to listen to him talk because he sounds and over talks like customers I deal with. And it's like, oh, that is so true. I understand that completely because he's trying to power through, and it's a power play. It's a bullying tactic. So that's what, and I hit on that earlier, that's what he's going to do, is he's going to try to bully his way through this because he can't win this on ideas. Joe's doing okay, but he's stumbling a bit. I don't want to say he looks tired, But on the same, he's looking strong. But there's a couple stumbles here, and that's another side point. But Trump is not doing well. So let's continue on.
President Biden?
Nobody's doing that. He's racist.
You just don't.
Here's the deal. I know a lot more about
You
this
don't.
than you do.
Let him finish.
The fact is that there is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware of what other people feel like, what insults them, what is demeaning to them. It's important that people know that they don't want to. Many people don't want to hurt other people's feelings, but it makes a big difference. It makes a gigantic difference in the way a child is able to grow up and have a sense of self-esteem. It's a little bit like how this guy and his friends look down on so many people. They look down their nose on people like Irish Catholics like me and grew up in Scranton. They look down on people who don't have money. They look down on people who are of a different faith. They look down on people who are a different color. In fact, we're all Americans. The only way we're going to bring this country together is bring everybody together. There's nothing we cannot do if we do it together. We can take this on and we can defeat racism in America.
President Trump, sir.
During the Obama-Biden administration, there was tremendous division. There was hatred. You look at Ferguson. You go to very many places. Look at Oakland. Look what happened in Oakland. Look what happened in Baltimore. Look what happened. Frankly, it was more violent than what I'm even seeing now. But the reason is that the Democrats that run these cities don't want to talk like you about law and order.
Violent
you
crime,
still haven't mentioned. Are you in
crime.
favor of law and order?
I'm in favor of law. You follow
Are you in
it and a
favor
little bit
of
of
law and
order.
order? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm in favor.
You asked a question, let him finish.
Law and order.
Loses
Law and order. Law and order with justice, where people get treated fairly. And the fact of the matter is, violent crime went down 17%, 15% in our administration.
All right.
It's gone up on his watch.
Went down much more than ours.
All right, we're down to your Mr. President. You're going to Mr. President.
Every record in the
Mr.
book.
President, you're going to be very happy because we're now going to talk about law and order.
Because we had trouble with Democratic-run cities.
That's exactly my question. There has been a dramatic increase in homicides in America this summer, particularly, and you often blame that on Democratic mayors and Democratic governors, but in fact there have been equivalent spikes in Republican-led cities like Tulsa and Fort Worth. So the question is this really a party issue?
I think it's a party issue. You can bring in a couple of examples, but if you look at Chicago, what's going on in Chicago, where 53 people were shot and 8 died shot. If you look at New York, where it's going up like nobody's ever seen anything, the numbers are going up 100, 150, 200%. Crime. It is crazy what's going on. And he doesn't want to say law and order because he can't, because he'll lose his radical left supporters. And once he does that, it's over with. But if he ever got to run this country and they ran it the way he would want to run it, our suburbs would be gone. By the way, our suburbs would be gone. And you would see problems like you've never seen.
He wouldn't know a suburb unless he took a wrong turn.
Oh, I know suburbs.
He would not.
I
was raised in the suburbs. This is not 1950. All these dog whistles on racism don't work anymore. Suburbs are by and large integrated. There's many people today driving their kids to soccer practice and or to black and white and Hispanic in the same car as there have been any time in the past. What really is a threat to the suburbs and their safety is his failure to deal with COVID. They're dying in the suburbs. His failure to deal with the environment. They're being flooded. They're being burned out because his refusal to do anything. That's why the suburbs are in trouble.
I do want to talk about this issue of law and order, though. And in the joint recommendation that came from the Biden-Bernie Sanders task force, you talked about, quote, reimagining policing. First of all, what does reimagining policing mean, and do you support?
It means.
Let me, if I might finish the question. What does reimagining policing mean, and do you support the Black Lives Matter call for community control of policing?
Look, what I support is the police having the opportunity to deal with the problems they face. And I'm totally opposed to defunding the police officers. As a matter of fact, local police, The only one defunding it, his budget calls for a $400 million cut in local law enforcement assistance. They need more assistance. They need, when they show up for a 9/11 call, to have someone with them as a psychologist or psychiatrist to keep them from having to use force and be able to talk people down. We have to have community policing like we had before, where the officers get to know the people in the communities. That's when crime went down. It didn't go up, it went down. And so we have to be engaged.
That's not what they're talking about, Chris. That's not what he's talking about defunding the police.
That is not true.
He doesn't have any law
Well,
support. He has no law.
Okay, so Biden is threading a needle because he's a centrist and he's going to thread a needle. And that's just the way that goes, unfortunately. So, but basically he is discussing basically what the defund the police is. Because it's not the funding as we're taking the money away. And that's, I've already touched on that. But it is, we're getting, psychological help there. We're getting, so that psychiatrists are there on these calls, especially when they're the mental health calls and stuff like that. There was that case of where there was a autistic man, and he was in his 20s or 30s, and his helper, and they were both African American, and his helper had his hands up and is like, "Please don't shoot. He is autistic. He doesn't know what you're doing." And the guy reaches, and it's a truck, and it is clear as day. It is a toy truck. It is his prized possession, and the police start shooting at him. Whereas if this was done where they've gotten the proper training, or where we have sent out, where they may send out a police officer in case things get to the point of possible violence, but for the most part there is a special unit that handles these kind of phone calls, or these kind of where they're sent out for this kind of situation. That's where they go out and they handle it. They're still technically police officers, but they're more social workers as well, or they're more therapists or whatever. They are trained. They know what they know how to handle these situations for acute situations until they can get things calmed down, get them into a hospital or whatever, so that there aren't shootings, because that has happened more times than you can count. And that's what he is. And Trump is like, oh no, he's talking about defunding the police. He's not. He's talking about expanding the police in a certain way. And he talked about community policing, because it's true. When you have the police force is in the community, and it is by the community. Well, in other words, that the police are living in the community and are from that community and stuff like that. Crime goes down because they know these kids, and more important, not just kids, but yes, starting with the kids who may be dabbling in. And at that point, they can pull them aside, and they don't enter the system. At that point, they're not immediately gone to jail because they pull them aside and they stop them from doing something stupid initially. And they can work with these kids and stuff like that. And business owners are more willing not to throw these kids in jail because this whole community is like, okay, you know what? If he works off this, that's fine. And what it works off, like if he was going to steal something, like let's say it was local. That's the other problem, is local businesses versus these big businesses which don't do that. But if you have a local business, that's much more helpful in those situations, because a local business will be more willing to be lenient if it shows that the kid may have an opportunity to get better. And then you see this expansion, and that's where you see it work. And it does work, but so many people just want to throw them away and forget about it. But it takes work to fix this, and it takes community policing. It takes community efforts, and everybody to be on that same page. And if you're not, then all you get is full jails.
That's not true.
Almost
That's
nothing.
not. Look,
Who do you have? Name one group that supports you. Name one group that came out and supported you. Go ahead.
Look.
Think. We have time.
We don't have time to do
No,
anything.
think about it. Name one law enforcement group that came out and
I think,
supported.
gentlemen, I think I'm going to take back the
There
moderator's
aren't. I don't
role,
think there
and
are any.
I want to get to another subject, which is the issue of protests in many cities that have turned violent. In Portland, Oregon, especially, we had more than 100 straight days of protests, which I think you would agree. You talk about peaceful protests. Many of those turned into riots. Mr. Vice President, you say that people who commit crimes should be held accountable. The question I have, though, is as the Democratic nominee, and earlier tonight you said that you are the Democratic Party right now, have you ever called the Democratic mayor of Portland or the Democratic governor of Oregon and said, hey, you got to stop this, bring in the National Guard, do whatever it takes, but you stop the days and months of violence in Portland?
I don't hold public office now. I am a former vice president. I've made it clear in my public statements that the violence should be prosecuted. It should be prosecuted. And anyone who commits it
But you've
should be
never
prosecuted.
called for the people, the leader, excuse me, sir, you have never called for the leaders in Portland and in Oregon to bring in the National Guard and knock off 100 days of riots.
They can, in fact, take care of it if he just stay out of the way. Look here.
Oh, really?
Here.
Oh, really?
Here's the
But
thing.
that-
I sent in the
wait a minute,
U.S.
I asked him a
Marshals to
question.
get the killer of a young man in the middle of the street. They shot him. And for 3 days,
President Trump,
Portland wouldn't do anything. I had to send in the U.S. Marshals. They
President
took
Trump,
care of business.
Go ahead,
And,
sir.
and by the way, his own former spokesperson said, riots and chaos and violence help his cause. That's what this is all about.
I don't know who said that.
I do.
Who?
I think Kellyanne Conway.
I don't think she said that.
She said that.
I don't
And so here's the point.
Go
The
ahead.
point is that that's what he is keep trying to rile everything up. He doesn't want to calm things down. Instead of going in and talking to people and saying, let's get everybody together, figure out how to deal with this. What's he do? He just pours gasoline in the fire constantly
And-
every single solitary
Okay,
time.
and to end this, button up this segment, I'm going to give you a minute to answer, sir. You have repeatedly
I
criticized.
have to answer his
No,
statement.
you have
His statement?
repeatedly.
Wait,
You have
just
repeatedly.
one
No,
second.
you've been talking
You
back
made
and
a
forth.
statement.
I'm asking you.
I would love to end it.
sir.
I would love to end it, and
You
we
know, if
would
you want to
very-
switch seats,
We
we
would
could
very quickly.
We can do that, but I'm.
Send
no,
in the National Guard, it would be over. There'd be no problem.
Okay.
But they
Good.
don't want to accept the National Guard.
You have repeatedly criticized the vice president for not specifically calling out Antifa and other left-wing
That's right.
extremist groups. But are you willing tonight to condemn white supremacists and militia groups
Sure.
and to say that they need to stand down and not add to the violence in a number of these cities, as we saw in Kenosha and as we've seen in Portland?
Sure,
Are you
I'm willing
prepared to
do that,
specifically
but
do it?
I
Go
would
ahead,
say,
sir.
I would say almost everything I see is from the left wing, not from the right
So
wing.
what are you
If
saying?
I'm willing to do anything. I want to see
Well,
peace.
then do it, sir.
Say it. Do it. Say it.
You want to call him? What do you want to call him? Give me a name. Give me a
White
name. Go ahead.
supremacists and
Who would
right
you like me to condemn?
white supremacists and right
Proud
militia.
Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem.
His
This
own
is a left.
FBI director
This
said,
is a left-wing problem.
white supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got it,
Not
kid.
militia. That's what his
It's an idea.
His
Okay.
FBI director
Gentlemen,
said.
Well, then you know what?
No, we're done, sir.
Everybody-
We're moving on to the next.
everybody-
We're moving.
When a bat hits you over the head, that's not an idea.
Everybody in
Antifa
your
is bad.
administration tells you the truth is a bad idea.
Can I tell you what?
You have no ideas that are.
Antifa is a dangerous
All right,
radical
gentlemen, we're
group.
now moving on to the Trump
And
and
you ought to be
Biden
careful with
records.
them. They'll overthrow you.
When a president, I'm going to ask a question. When the president seeks a second term, it is generally a referendum on his record. But Vice President Biden, you like to quote one of your dad's sayings, which is, don't compare me to the almighty, compare me to the alternative. And in this case, sir, you are the alternative. Looking at both of your records, I'm going to ask each of you, why should voters elect you president over your opponent? In this segment, President Trump, you go first, 2 minutes.
Because there has never been an administration or president who has done more than I've done in a period of 3.5 years. And that's despite the
That's true. He's done so much more to screw us up as a nation than any other president in history. Lord, it's hard to wake up in the mornings. knowing he's president. All right, moving on.
Impeachment hoax, and you saw what happened today with Hillary Clinton, where it was a whole big con job. But despite going through all of these things, where I had to fight both flanks and behind me and above, there has never been an administration that's done what I've done. The greatest, before COVID came in, the greatest economy in history, lowest unemployment numbers. Everything was good. Everything was going. And by the way, there was unity going to happen. People were calling me for the first time in years. They were calling and they were saying, it's time maybe. And then what happened? We got hit, but now we're building it back up again. A rebuilding of the military, including Space Force and all of the other things. A fix.
Okay, to be fair, Space Force is fucking stupid. It is a ridiculous idea. I am so sorry. Why the fuck? Really? And they also stole the... look, it's late, so I'm already... And they stole the iconography from Star Trek, just so you're aware.
Of the VA, which was a mess under him. 308,000 people died because they didn't have proper...
All right, to be fair, vice presidents don't do a lot, so you can point to him and say it's his fault, but honestly, he can only do so much. And honestly, the VA acts that happened under Obama were... Here's the thing. When certain laws and economies take about 8 years to fix or to see the full bloom of. So for Obama to see that bloom in less than 6 years, that is a big deal. And also, certain legislation takes a lot longer, so it takes more time. So as it takes more time for that to happen, the other president gets to claim it as a victory when it's not. So...
Yeah, he was a mess. And we now got a 91% approval rating at the VA, our vets. We take care of our vets. But we've rebuilt our military. The job that we've done, and I'll tell you something, some people say maybe the most important. By the end of the first term, I'll have approximately 300 federal judges and Court of Appeals judges, 300, and hopefully 3 great Supreme Court judges, justices. That is a record, the likes of which very few people, and one of the reasons I'll have so many judges, because President Obama and him left me 120.
Well, no. President Obama didn't leave anybody. Thanks to Mitch McConnell, he blocked all those judges so that they could then fill it with a Republican. So, yeah, fuck you.
Judges to fill. When you leave office, you don't leave any judges. That's like, you just don't do that. They left 128 openings, and if I were a member of his party, because they have a little different philosophy, I'd say if you left us 128 openings, you can't be a good president, you can't be a good vice president. But I want to thank you, because it gives us almost, it'll probably be above that number by the end of this term. 300 judges. It's a record.
Looking at both your records, why should voters elect you president as opposed to President Trump? You have 2 minutes uninterrupted.
Under this president, we've become weaker, sicker, poorer, more divided, and more violent. When I was vice president, we inherited a recession. I was asked to fix it. I did. We left him a booming economy, and he caused a recession. With regard to being weaker, the fact is that I've gone head-to-head with Putin and made it clear to him we're not going to take any of his stuff. He's Putin's puppy. He still refuses to even say anything to Putin about the bounty on the heads of American soldiers.
Your son got $3.5 million.
And by the way, my son...
Wait a minute. Mr. President, your campaign agreed to both sides would get 2-minute answers uninterrupted. Well, your side agreed to it, and why don't you observe what your campaign agreed to as a ground rule, okay, sir?
He never keeps his word.
No, I'm not asking. That was a rhetorical question.
Can you
go ahead,
back
sir.
30 seconds?
Yeah, yes,
okay.
you may have.
All right.
Go ahead.
So, thirdly, we're poor. The billionaires have gotten much more wealthy by a tune of over $300 to $400 billion more just since COVID. You in the home, you got less. You're in more trouble than you were before. In terms of being more violent, when we were in office, there were 15% less violence in America than there is today. He's president of the United States. It's on his watch. And with regard to more divided, the nation can't stay divided. We can't be this way. And speaking of my son, the way you talk about the military, the way you talk about them being losers and being and just being suckers. My son was in Iraq. He spent a year there. He got the Bronze Star. He got the Conspicuous Service Medal. He was not a loser. He was a patriot. And the people left behind there were heroes.
Really?
And I resent.
Are you talking
like
about
hell.
Hunter? Are you talking about
I'm
Hunter?
talking about my son, Beau Biden. You're talking about
I don't know Beau. I know Hunter.
Yeah, you know Beau.
Hunter got thrown out of the military. He was thrown out, dishonorably discharged.
That's not true. It
For
wasn't dishonorably.
cocaine use. And he didn't have a job until you became vice president. Once you
None
became
of that
vice
is
president,
true.
he made a fortune in Ukraine, in China, in Moscow,
That is simply
and various
not
other places.
true.
He
My
made
son,
a fortune.
my son,
And he didn't have a job.
my son, like a lot of people we know at home, had a drug problem. He's overtaken it. He's fixed it. He's worked on it. And I'm proud of him.
But why
I'm
was he
proud of
given
my
tens
son.
of millions
All right,
of
but he
dollars?
wasn't given
All right,
tens of
he was
millions of
given
dollars. That
tens
is
of
totally,
millions of
that
dollars.
is totally
This is
discredited.
We've already been
Discredited.
We've already been through this. I think the American people would rather hear about more substantial
So do I.
subjects. Well, you know, as the moderator, sir, I'm going to make a
I know, but when
judgment call
somebody
here.
gets $3.5 million
Okay, right.
from the
Let's
mayor
talk
of
about-
Moscow,
let's talk
That
about
is
I
not
think it's
true.
a
Gentlemen,
That report is totally
Why did he do
discredited.
that?
Mitt Romney on that committee said it wasn't worth taxpayers' money. That report was written for political reasons.
You know, I'd like to talk about climate change.
So would I.
Okay. The forest fires in the West are raging now. They have burned millions of acres. They have displaced hundreds of thousands of people. When state officials there blame the fires on climate change, Mr. President, you said, I don't think the science knows. Over your 4 years, you have pulled the U.S. out of the Paris Climate Accord. You have rolled back a number of Obama environmental records. What do you believe about the science of climate change, and what will you do in the next 4 years to confront it?
I want crystal clean water and air. I want beautiful clean air. We have now the lowest carbon. If you look at our numbers right now, we are doing phenomenally. But I haven't destroyed our businesses. Our businesses aren't put out of commission. If you look at the Paris Accord, it was a disaster from our standpoint. And people are actually very happy about what's going on because our businesses are doing well. As far as the fires are concerned, you need forest management in addition to everything else.
Yeah, ask my friends who are in the West Coast how they're doing and how they feel currently and how fucking scared they currently are as they can't breathe the air or couldn't breathe the air because of all the forest fires. Yeah, they're thrilled. They're absolutely thrilled that you're doing such a great job with this, allowing people to, kill our environment even faster. So yeah, that's great.
The forest floors are loaded up with trees, dead trees that are years old, and they're like tinder, and leaves and everything else. You drop a cigarette in there, the whole forest burns down. You've got to have forest management.
What do you
You've got to have
believe?
cuts.
What do you believe about the science of climate change, sir?
I believe that we have to do everything we can to have immaculate air, immaculate water, and do whatever else we can that's good. You know, we're planting 1 billion trees, the Billion Tree Project, and it's very
Do you
exciting.
believe that human pollution, greenhouse gas emissions contributes to the global warming of
I
this
think
planet?
a lot of things do, but I think to an extent, yes. But I also think we have to do better management of our forests. Every year, I get the call, California's burning. California's burning. If that was cleaned, if you had forest management, good forest management, you wouldn't be getting those calls. You know, in Europe, they live their forest cities. They're called forest cities. They maintain their forests. They manage their forests. I was with the head of a major country. It's a forest city. He said, sir, we have trees that are far more, they ignite much easier than California. There shouldn't be that problem. I spoke with the governor about it. I'm getting along very well with the governor. But I said, at some point, you can't every year have hundreds of thousands of acres of land just burned to the ground.
But, sir,
that's burning down because of a lack of
But
management.
sir, if you believe in the science of climate change, why have you rolled back the Obama Clean Power Plan, which limited carbon emissions in power plants. Why have you relaxed?
Because it was driving energy prices through the sky.
Why have you relaxed fuel economy standards that are going to create more pollution from cars?
Well, not really, because what's happening is the car is much less expensive and it's a much safer car, and you're talking about a tiny difference, and then what would happen, because of the cost of the car, you would have at least double and triple the number of cars purchased. We have the old slugs out there that are 10, 12 years old. If you did that, the car would be safer, it would be much cheaper by $3,500.
In the case of California, they've simply
No, but you would take a lot of cars off the market because people would be able to afford a car. Now, and by the way, we're going to see how that turns out. But a lot of people agree with me, many people. The car has gotten so expensive because they have computers all over the place for an extra little bit of gasoline. And I'm okay with electric cars too. I think I'm all for electric cars. I've given big incentives for electric cars. But what they've done in California is just crazy.
Vice President Biden, I'd like you to respond to the president's climate change record, but I also want to ask you about a concern. You proposed $2 trillion in green jobs. You talk about new limits, not abolishing, but new limits on fracking, ending the use of fossil fuels to generate electricity by 2035, and zero net emission of greenhouse gases by 2050. The president says a lot of these things would tank the economy and cost millions of jobs.
He's absolutely wrong, number one. Number two, if in fact, during our administration, the Recovery Act, I was in charge, able to bring down the cost of renewable energy to cheaper than or as cheap as coal and gas and oil. Nobody's going to build another coal-fired plant in America. No one's going to build another oil-fired plant in America. They're going to move to renewable energy, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that we are able to take the federal fleet and turn it into a fleet that's run on their electric vehicles. Making sure that we can do that, we're going to put 500,000 charging stations and all of the highways that we're going to be building in the future. We're going to build an economy that in fact is going to provide for the ability of us to take 4 million buildings and make sure that they in fact are weatherized in a way that in fact they'll emit significantly less gas and oil because the heat will not be going out. There's so many things that we can do now to create thousands and thousands of jobs. We can get to net zero in terms of energy production by 2035. Not only not costing people jobs, creating jobs, creating millions of good paying jobs, not $15 an hour, but prevailing wage, by having a new infrastructure that in fact is green. And the first thing I will do, I will rejoin the Paris Accord. I will join the Paris Accord because with us out of it, look what's happening. It's all falling apart. And talk about someone who has no relationship with foreign policy. Brazil, the rainforests of Brazil are being torn down, are being ripped down. More carbon is absorbed in that rainforest than every bit of carbon that's emitted in the United States. Instead of doing something about that, I would be gathering up and making sure we had the countries of the world coming up with $20 billion and say, here's $20 billion. Stop tearing down the forest. And if you don't, then you're going to have significant economic consequences.
What about the argument that President Trump basically says that you have to balance environmental interests and economic interests, and he's drawn his line?
Well, he hadn't drawn a line. He still, for example, makes sure that he wants to make sure that methane's not a problem. You can now emit more methane without it being a problem. Methane. This is a guy who says that you don't have to have mileage standards for automobiles that exist now. This is a guy who says that the fact is, it's all true. And here's the deal.
Talking about the Green New Deal, and it's not $2 billion or $20 billion, as you said. It's $100 trillion.
I'm talking about
where they want to rip down buildings and rebuild the building.
No,
it's the dumbest, most ridiculous. Where airplanes are out of business, where two-car systems are out, where they want to take out the cows too. That's not true either, right? This is a 100 trillion. That's more money than our country could make in 100 years if we
not the case.
All right, let me because I actually, wait a minute, sir. I actually have studied your plan, and it includes upgrading 4 million buildings, weatherizing 2 million homes over 4 years, building 1.5 million energy efficient homes. So the question becomes, the president is saying, I think some people who support the president would say that sounds like it's going to cost a lot of money and hurt the economy.
What it's going to do is going to create thousands and millions of jobs, good paying jobs.
But let him finish, sir.
He doesn't know how to do that.
$100 billion.
The fact is, it's going to create millions of good paying jobs, and these tax incentives to people for people to.
So the jobs that he's talking about is the green jobs, where we would create jobs where we would where we would basically be creating brand new jobs for creating or expanding jobs we currently have, creating more solar panels. Trust me, if I could afford it, my house would have solar panels on it right now. I'd had to trim some trees, but for the most part, because I don't have clearance, because I have a lot of trees in my around my house. But yes, solar panels, which honestly, and that's a push point, because if you look at little houses like mine's a small house, but with solar panels on the housing, and they're durable. They can take the hailstorm, the hail, and they can take all of this. They basically get you off of the electrical grid to where you don't have to, where the electrical company pays you. So, and I've seen solar farms being built, and all over. There's a little farmland that was no longer being done for farm that was bought and turned into a solar farm. There are lands on the interstates around here that are turned into solar farms, and windmills, wind farms, and stuff like that. And I think that is the jobs, and those are important to create, maintain, and maintain those kind of things. And those are more expensive jobs, but they're not super highly technical. They're technical in some respects, but they are skilled labor jobs. So it would be a skilled labor job, and therefore it would be more money, and therefore those individuals would pump that money into the economy. So it would be a gain as far as that concern and everything. And let's be fair, and I'll be honest with you, as much as people get triggered or get a little scared about nuclear energy, if it can, the problem is nuclear waste. And right now, there's not an answer for that, but nuclear energy is not a horrible choice. It's not the best choice, but it's, as far as clean energy is concerned, it's not a bad choice either. All right.
That's what she wants to get rid of. It's going to make the economy much safer. Look how much we're paying now to deal with the hurricanes. By the way, he has an answer for hurricanes. He said maybe we should drop a nuclear weapon on them. They may.
I never said that.
That's what he did say.
You made it up.
And here's the deal.
You make up.
We are going to be in a position.
He did say, what if we dropped a nuclear bomb into a hurricane? That would be bad.
Where we can create hard, good jobs by making sure the environment is clean and we all are in better shape. We spend billions of dollars on floods, hurricanes, rising seas. We're in real trouble. Look what's happened just in the Midwest with these storms that come through and wipe out entire sections and counties in Iowa. That didn't happen before. They're because of global warming. We make up 15% of the world's problem. We, in fact, but the rest of the world, we've got to get them to come along. That's why we have to get back into the Paris Accord.
All right, gentlemen.
Wait a minute, Chris. So why didn't he do it for 47 years? You were vice president. Why didn't you get the world? China sends up real dirt into the air. Russia does. India does. They all do. We're supposed to be good. And by the way, he made a couple of statements. The Green New Deal is $100 trillion.
That is not my plan.
That's
the Green New Deal is not my plan.
I want to rebuild every He made a statement about the military. He said I said something about the military. He and his friends made it up, and then they went with it. I never said it.
Okay.
That is
what
not
he
true.
did is he said he called the military stupid bastards.
I
and he
did
said
not
it on
say
tape.
that.
He said stupid bastards. He said it.
Stop.
I would never say that.
Play it.
Stop.
Play it.
Go ahead,
You're
Mr.
on
Vice
tape.
President. answered his final question.
The final question is, I can't remember which of all was ranting.
I'm having a little trouble myself, but and about the economy and about this question of what it's going to cost.
The economy.
I mean, the Green New Deal and the idea of what your environmental changes will do.
The Green New Deal will pay for itself as we move forward. You're not going to build plants that, in fact, are great polluting plants.
So do you support the Green New Deal?
Pardon me?
You support?
No, I don't support the Green New Deal.
You don't? Oh, well, that's a big statement.
I support
you
the
just
Biden.
announced the radical left.
I support
You
the
don't?
Biden plan that I put forward.
Okay.
The Biden plan, which is different than what he calls the radical Green New Deal.
All right, gentlemen, final segment, election integrity. As we meet tonight, Mildy.
All right, so this is going to be a fun one, full of lies. So, but this is the final segment. Holy sweet baby Jesus, we've made it through. It is almost 11 o'clock at night here as far as the recording. The one person who is currently watching, I appreciate you staying with me for 2 hours and 12 minutes. We're almost done. Be proud. And I'll try not to pause as much, but I'll probably pause a lot more.
Americans are receiving mail-in ballots or going to vote early. How confident should we be that this will be a fair election, and what are you prepared to do over the next 5+ weeks, because it'll not only be to election day but also counting some ballots, mail-in ballots after election day? What are you prepared to do to reassure the American people that the next president will be the legitimate winner of this election? In this final segment, Mr. Vice President, you go first.
Prepared to let people vote. They should go to iwillvote.com. Decide how they're going to vote, when they're going to vote, and what means by which they're going to vote. His own Homeland Security Director, and as well as the FBI Director, says there is no evidence at all that mail-in ballots are a source of being manipulated and cheating. They said that. The fact is that there are going to be millions of people because of COVID that are going to be voting by mail-in ballots, like he does, by the way. He sits behind the Resolute desk and sends his ballot to Florida, number one. Number two, we're going to make sure that those people who want to vote in person are able to vote, because enough poll watchers are there to make sure they can socially distance. The polls are open on time, and the polls stay open until the votes are counted. And this is all about trying to dissuade people from voting, because he's trying to scare people into thinking that it's not going to be legitimate. Show up and vote. You will determine the outcome of this election. Vote, vote, vote. If you're able to vote early in your state, vote early. If you're able to vote in person, vote in person. Vote whatever way is the best way for you, because he cannot stop you from being able to determine the outcome of this election. And in terms of whether or not, when the votes are counted, and they're all counted, that will be accepted. If I win, that will be accepted. If I lose, they'll be accepted. But by the way, if in fact he says he's not sure what he's going to accept, well, let me tell you something. It doesn't matter, because if we get the votes, it's going to be all over. He's going to go. He can't stay in power. It won't happen. It won't happen. So vote. Just make sure you understand you have it in your control to determine what this country's going to look like the next 4 years. Is it going to change? Or you get 4 more years of these lies?
Mr. President, 2 minutes.
So when I listened to Joe talking about a transition, there's been no transition from when I won. I won that election. And if you look at crooked Hillary Clinton, if you look at all of the different people, there was no transition, because they came after me trying to do a coup. They came after me spying on my campaign. They started from the day I won, and even before I won, from the day I came down the escalator with our First Lady. They were a disaster. They were a disgrace to our country. And we've caught them. We've caught them all. We've got it all on tape. We've caught them all. And by the way, you gave the idea for the Logan Act against General Flynn. You better take a look at that, because we caught you in a sense, and President Obama was sitting in the office. He knew about it too. So don't tell me about a free transition. As far as the ballots are concerned, it's a disaster. A solicited ballot, okay, solicited is okay. You're soliciting, you're asking, they send it back, you send it back. I did that. If you have an unsolicited, they're sending millions of ballots all over the country. There's fraud. They found them in creeks. They found some with the name Trump, just happened to have the name Trump just the other day in a waste paper basket. They're being sent all over the place. They sent 2 in a Democrat area. They sent out 1,000 ballots. Everybody got 2 ballots. This is going to be a fraud like you've never seen. The other thing, it's nice on November 3rd, you're watching and you see who won the election. And I think we're going to do well because people are really happy with the job we've done. But you know what? We won't know. We might not know for months because these ballots are going to be all over. Take a look at what happened in Manhattan. Take a look at what happened in New Jersey. Take a look at what happened in Virginia and other places. They're not losing 2%, 1%, which, by the way, is too much. An election could be won or lost with that. They're losing 30 and 40%. It's a fraud, and it's a shame. And can you imagine where they say you have to have your ballot in by November 10th? November 10th. That means that's 7 days after.
No, it's not. It's not November 10th. No. They have to be in. They have to be postmarked by the election day. That is state North Carolina. That is. I have looked at most of the states. I haven't looked at all of them because there's 50 of them. But they all have to be sent in by a certain time frame. They all have to be postmarked by a certain time frame. He's lying about that. Literally, to quote Daniel Dale, I'm not exaggerating when I say almost literally everything Donald Trump has said about mail-in voting is wrong, in whole or in part. Like almost every single claim, every single example. He is a fact checker. He is bipartisan because he has fact-checked and corrected Trump on some things here. Here's another one just a few minutes ago after that. Just an avalanche of lying from Trump as usual. Biden was imperfect but largely accurate. I got trolled for saying that. It's a fact.
Election, in theory, should have been announced.
Okay.
We have major states with that.
Sir,
all run by
2 minutes
Democrats.
is 2 minutes.
All run by Democrats. It's
President Trump,
it's a rigged election.
you're going to be able to continue. You have been charging for months that mail-in balloting is going to be a disaster. You say it's rigged, that it's going to lead to fraud. But in 2018, in the last midterm election, 31 million people voted mail-in voting. That was a quarter, more than a quarter of all the voters that year cast their ballots by mail. Now that millions of mail-in ballots have gone out, what are you going to do about it? And are you counting on the Supreme Court, including a Justice Barrett, to settle any dispute?
Yeah, I think I'm counting on them to look at the ballots, definitely. I hope we don't need them in terms of the election itself. But for the ballots, I think so. Because what's happening is incredible. I read today, where at least 1% of the ballots for 2016 were invalidated. They take them, we don't like them, we don't like them.
But what
They
are you
throw
going to do
them out
about
left
it? There
and
are
right.
millions of ballots going out
What
right
you
now.
do
What
is
are
you
gonna
go
do?
and vote. You do a solicited ballot,
No,
and that's okay,
I know
or
your
you go and
complaint.
vote.
I'm asking you about the fact that millions of people...
You go and vote. You go and
No,
vote.
but
Like
I'm saying is, what are you
they
gonna do
used
about
to
the
in
fact
the
that
old.
millions of people...
You either do, Chris, a solicited ballot where you're sending it in, they're sending it back, and you're sending. They have mailmen with.
Okay, so to be fair, except there are like a couple of states that do mail-in ballot only. Everybody else, state of North Carolina, you have to request to get a absentee ballot. 90% of the states, and again, I'm not. California is a little weird what they're doing right now. I think they're sending out. Hey, do you want a mail-in ballot? More than but it's still you have to send the request back, and then they will send in a mail-in ballot to you. So it's still solicited. What he is claiming, which is a fucking lie, is that he is claiming that they are sending out unsolicited ballots, which is incorrect. And by the way, I have gotten 6 or 7 of these letters that look like ballots, but they are GOP, and they've done this for years, and it's just gotten completely insane now. But they've done this for years, where they are basically going through, and they'll send out something that looks like a ballot, and you fill it out and you send it back, and it's like, oh, I've done voted. It is a tactic that the GOP has done for years, and for whatever reason, it has not been stopped. But that is something they do quite often.
Did you see what's going on? Take a look at West Virginia. Mailmen selling the ballots. They're being sold. They're being dumped in rivers. This is a horrible thing for our country. This is not going to end well. This is not going to end well.
5 states have had mail-in ballots for the last decade or more. 5, including 2 Republican states. And you don't have to solicit the ballot. It's sent to you. It's sent to your home. What they're saying is that it has to be a postmark by election day. If it doesn't get in till the 7th, 8th, 9th, it still should be counted. He's just afraid of counting the votes because
You're wrong. You're wrong.
I want to continue with you on this, Vice President Biden.
Chris, he's so wrong when he makes a statement like that.
Excuse me. Vice President Biden, the biggest problem, in fact, over the years with mail-in voting has not been fraud historically. It has been that sizable numbers, sometimes hundreds of thousands of ballots are thrown out because they have not been properly filled out, or there is some other irregularity, or they missed the deadline. So the question I have is, are you concerned that the Supreme Court, with a Justice Barrett, will settle any dispute?
I'm concerned that any court would settle this because here's the deal. When you get a ballot and you fill it out, you're supposed to have an affidavit. If you didn't know, you have someone say that this is me. You should be able to, if in fact you can verify that's you before the ballot is thrown out, that's sufficient to be able to count the ballot because someone made a mistake and not dotting the correct I. Who they voted for, testify, say who they voted for, say it's you, that is totally legitimate.
All right.
Excuse me, when you have 80 million ballots, Senate and swamping the system, you know it can't be done. You know it can't, and already
right.
there's been
so now
mail service delivers
gentlemen, in the final question is, in 8 states, we can keep talking. In 8 states, election workers are prohibited, currently by law, 8 states, from even beginning to process ballots, even take them out of the envelopes and flatten them until election day. That means that it's likely, because there's going to be a huge increase in mail-in balloting, that we are not going to know on election night who the winner is, that it could be days, it could be weeks,
could be months,
until we find out who the new president is. So first for you, sir, finally for the Vice President, I hope neither of you will interrupt the other. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm during this extended period, not to engage in any civil unrest, and will you pledge tonight that you will not declare victory until the election has been independently certified? President Trump, you go first.
I'm urging my supporters to go into the polls and watch very carefully, because that's what has to happen. I am urging them to do it. As you know, today there was a big problem. In Philadelphia, they went in to watch. They were called poll watchers, a very safe, very nice thing. They were thrown out. They weren't allowed to watch. You know why? Because bad things happen in Philadelphia, bad things. And I am urging my people. I hope it's going to be a fair election. If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. And I'll tell you what, from a common sense,
does that mean
I'll tell you what it means. It means you have a fraudulent election. You're sending out 80 million ballots. They're not equipped to. These people aren't equipped to handle it. Number one. Number two, they cheat. They cheat. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
Vice President
you think
Biden,
that's good?
Vice President Biden, final question for you. Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
Yes, and here's the deal. They count the ballots, as you pointed out. Some of these ballots in some states can't even be opened until election day. And if there's thousands of ballots, it's going to take time to do it. And by the way, our military, they've been voting by ballots since at the end of the Civil War, in effect. And that's what's going to happen. Why was it not? Why is it for them somehow not fraudulent? It's the same process. It's honest. No one has established at all that there is fraud related to mail-in ballots. That somehow it's a fraudulent process.
It's already been established.
So, before we end tonight, a couple of real quick points on this. The Republicans have screamed fraud, mail-in ballot fraud or fraud and voter fraud for years and years and years, and there has been no significant fraud ever found, ever. So this is just the same ploy that they've used for years. And the thing is that this is basically what they want to do. And this is why I think Chris Wallace asked that question, and he got the answer that I expected, is that Trump is going to try to basically cause outrage while we're waiting for these votes to be counted and everything. Here's the thing, a lot of those that can't be opened and everything, most of them are still bubble ballots, which slip them in, file them in, and they're read very quickly, and it doesn't take that much time. And normally those are handled in a separate department, and they're fed very quickly, and they could, and if you get enough people, which I know there hasn't been enough poll workers, but I think that has been fixed in some respects, that I think that we're at this point where I think it'll be okay. It may not be quite as long of a wait as people are afraid of.
Take a look at Carolyn Maloney's race.
You had an opportunity to respond.
Carolyn
Go ahead.
They have no idea what
Vice
happened.
President Biden, go ahead.
He has no idea what he's talking about. Here's the deal. The fact is, I will accept it, and he will too. You know why? Because once the winner is declared, after all the ballots are counted, all the votes are counted, that'll be the end of it. That'll be the end of it. And if it's me, in fact, fine. If it's not me, I'll support the outcome, and I'll be a president not just for the Democrats. I'll be a president for Democrats and Republicans. And this guy,
I want to see an
fact,
honest ballot count.
Gentlemen, you say that's the end of it? This is the end of this debate?
Honest ballot count.
We're
And I
going to
think
leave
he
it
does
there.
too.
To be continued as in more debates as we go on. President Trump, Vice President Biden, it's been an interesting hour and a half. I want to thank you both for participating.
So I'm going to leave it on for just a few minutes because I want to hear their initial reactions to this, and then I'll stop it and I'll end this one. And I was going to record tonight's show, or the show for this week tonight. I'm not going to do that. My voice is already shot. It's been 2.5 hours on this, so I'm going to work on getting this uploaded and everything else, and go from there. So, oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. This has been okay.
It's all over, including the shouting in Cleveland, and we'll keep our cameras trained on the hall at the end of this. As you may know, a limited crowd present. What a dark event we have just witnessed. The tip of the hat to Cormac McCarthy when we say, if that wasn't a mess, it'll do till the mess gets here. As difficult as that was to watch, as the spouses now join both men on stage, as bracing as it is to realize this behavior is taking place in pursuit of the job we used to refer to as leader of the free world, there was an incumbent on that stage tonight, a president who passed up an opportunity more than once to unify, president who passed up an opportunity to pay even passing tribute to Joe Biden's dead son who served his country, a president who passed up an opportunity to denounce supremacy groups like the Proud Boys and their ilk, telling them instead to stand back, and added for good measure, stand by. We'll stay on this as all of the participants have cleared the stage now, including the moderator, Chris Wallace, who's been the subject of a lot of talk already tonight. It was all new territory for those who have followed the presidency just even as citizens over the course of our lifetime. President could not agree on mask wearing, could not give a full-throated endorsement of that.
Okay, so we'll go over this in just a few minutes. It's Brian Williams. Why is it Brian Williams? Anyways, we'll be wrapping this up here in a second, but oh my gosh. I have watched contentious presidential debates. The 4 years ago was difficult. Sweet baby Jesus, this was hard. Oh my God. Oh, Lord. I'm kind of glad I'm not covering the other two in a way, because this was not easy at all to watch. Anyone who watched this, I'm sure, turned off fairly early. because this was just, oh my God, this was so horrible. I'm actually going to do something here while we're live. So I've just messaged September. I'm just like, anyways. So yeah, that happened. All right, so let's get through a couple of. Let's see if I get a little response here.
Tried his best to diminish any assurances about the safety, integrity of our coming election. Took him 47 minutes to get to Hunter Biden, a subject he returned to again and again. His opinion, his assessment of the administrative job on coronavirus was a great job, 200,000 dead to the contrary. And about his remark to inject disinfectant, famously in the White House briefing room, he now says that was said in sarcasm. As I toss to my colleagues, Rachel Maddow, Joy Reid, Nicole Wallace, there is so much here in just going through my notes. It also strikes me, gang, that for the first time at one of these, we heard a challenger say into the camera about his opponent, the incumbent president, if he loses, he's going to go. He can't stay in power. Vast reason to say that. Just a first in our history, Rachel.
Yeah, the first time that you've ever had to give the American people a reason to imagine a future where the voters decide the outcome of an election. Not a strong man who says he'll refuse to go because any election that doesn't reinstate him in power is by definition illegitimate. I mean, I didn't have the night that I expected to have as a person who's involved in this coverage. I spent the last few days and weeks and certainly many hours in the last 24 preparing my knowledge base so that we could do some, sober, rapid-fire fact-checking on what both candidates said from the stage. We'll do that. That will happen in days ahead, and we'll do some of that tonight. But what happened on that debate stage was unlike anything that has ever happened on a presidential debate stage ever before. The clear choice that the American people have to make doesn't much feel like a choice between Biden and Trump. It feels like a choice between a type of civic, normal politics where there are debates which have rules, where people on both sides may talk over each other a little bit, but at least they are participating in the same process. And we ultimately decide which one of them we want to be the leader. Or we have what we have seen tonight and what this incumbent president is promising, which is a monstrous, unintelligible display of logorrhea, which has absolutely nothing to do with civic discourse, with debate, or even with the integrity of the contest they're about to approach. The fact that they ended this by him saying that the election doesn't matter to him, that ballots, the 80 million ballots will overwhelm the system, you know it. The system will be overwhelmed, therefore the ballots shouldn't be counted. He is not participating in a re-election campaign. He is arguing that he should stay in office and the election should be negated. He treated the debate that way, with a monstrous, just cavalcade of increasingly wild and obscene lies, including lying about the vice president's dead son in Iraq as a way of trying to score points on it while that part of the debate arrived. There's something beyond fact-checking that needs to happen here. This is the sort of thing that shouldn't happen. This sort of debate shouldn't happen in a democracy. Not one in which we decide, in which we think that we choose between candidates based on them proposing competing sides of an argument. This is not the night I expected. Look.
And that is where I'm going to end that, as far as that's going. Because I'll be perfectly honest, I can't agree more. It's I don't know. This was hard. Very, very, very hard. This was This was not good for democracy. This was not healthy for democracy. This was terrifying, to be perfectly honest. This is the kind of thing that you don't want to see, you don't want to hear, you don't want to talk about. I don't know. I worry. So at this point, this is what I'm going to say, and this is how I'm going to personally end this. Is that basically at this point it needs to be overwhelming. The election results need to be overwhelming. It doesn't need to be a squeaker. It needs to be a trouncing. That is the only way. That is the only way that this can come out right. Because if it's not a trouncing, if it is if it's anything but that trouncing, then I don't know how the election is going to play out. I'll be perfectly honest. So let me end. Thank you again for joining us at Heresy and Hearsay. I'm Reverend Barney. You can follow me on Twitter at SethRothII, and of course now my Twitch, Daniel_Rev_Barney. And you can find the show on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and any podcast catcher, as well as our website. Just Google us. Don't forget our Patreon page, where $2 a month can help keep us going. You can also find my partner on Twitch and Twitter at 9of12, that's NINEOF12, and hear her on the Geek Girls podcast. Thank you for listening, and bless your hearts.